Senator-elect, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, sir. We can. I would ask, I guess we'll do roll call first.
Senator Dockstader? Here. Senator Larson? Representative Davis?
Here.
Representative Erickson?
Here.
Co-Chairman Ide?
Here.
Co-Chairman Moore?
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No amendments? Okay. With that, we will remind the audience, if you haven't signed in, please sign in before you leave. And then on the agenda, it looks like we're up to number 2. And I know that we'd heard from our senators. There isn't anybody here representing Congressman Hageman, is there? Okay, we weren't sure if she had somebody else coming. So I guess, Mr. Co-Chair, do you want to do anything? I mean, nobody showed up. I kind of hate to just drop the ball. Any suggestions?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Wharf. Yeah, I guess a little disappointing that nobody's here today to give us an update or status report. We did, just looking at it here, we got an email from Senator Barrasso's office, just for anybody in the audience that's curious. Let's see here, I think it was Kit Wentland, who is policy advisor for Senator Barrasso's office. And apparently they do have, I'm trying to look to see who this went to. I guess members of the committee, the 2 chairmen are the only ones that got it, but I'll just read it here. Is that okay, Mr. Chairman? So everybody's...
Yeah, but let's send that to the other members of the committee just so they've got it for the record as well.
Okay. In fact, maybe LSO could do that, actually, except...
They're saying they didn't get it,
Yeah.
Bob, so
Yeah.
would you like, Talise, would you like us to include you in that? Okay.
I'll do that after this, but it's pretty short. Says, good afternoon, Chairman Ide, Chairman Wharf. This is Kent Wentland. I handle energy policy for Senator Barrasso. Chief Bunning asked that I follow up with you after his testimony last week at the Select Federal Natural Resource Management Committee regarding Senate Joint Resolution 1 and House Joint Resolution 2. My colleagues from Senator Lummis's and Congresswoman Hageman's staff are CC'd to this email as well. The 3 of us met this week to review both of the legislature's resolutions and to reach out to the Department of Interior on the details of the legislature's request. Once we receive feedback from DOI, Department of Interior, we will circle back and provide you more information as quickly as possible. So that was the update there. And let's see here. You have anything to add to that, Chairman Wharf?
No, I guess what's the pleasure of the committee? do you think we need to prod them along a little bit more, or do you think we should just exercise patience and give them a little more grace? Oh, go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name's Lindy Lynn. I'm with Senator Lummis's office. And I am not here to provide commentary on that. However, our staff's understanding is that they're working with Senator Barrasso's office. And as the letter indicates, that they will be in touch with you regarding the information you want or whatnot. So.
Thank you. And I guess the only reason why I'm kind of suggesting maybe we do something is I know everybody's on summer break and I don't want it to get lost in that shuffle. So I know everybody's busy. We got some people that are campaigning, so I know it's a busy time, but I just wonder if we shouldn't. But what's the pleasure? I see Senator Dockstader.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was thinking last time we had explained our message and I know he didn't represent all the delegation, but he kind of did, Chief of Staff. And he was aware of what we were asking. I'm comfortable with where we are with the delegation right now.
Co-Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's the second email that from Kit Wentland from Senator Barrasso's office. I'll just read this and then I'll forward it to you. It's real short. This was just a few days ago, July 8th. I'm sure today's what, the 13th. So it says, follow up on this chain. We were able to get some feedback from the Department of Interior on the request of House Joint Resolution 2, Federal Mineral Royalty State Share. Then the next paragraph says, pertinent to Senate Joint Resolution 1, State Management Federal Mineral Leases, we also currently sponsored legislation regarding permitting reform on July 11th that would provide for cooperative federalism with states, including Wyoming, on oil and gas permitting on available federal land. The bill also includes a host of other comprehensive permitting reform proposals. A link to the bill can be found here. I'll forward this one as well. The part most relevant to state regulation on oil and gas permitting starts in section 1201. My colleagues and I would be happy to set up a call with both of you as chairman to discuss in the coming weeks. However, as the final work period before the August recess begins on July 13th, which is today, I don't believe we will be able to attend your hearing that day, unfortunately, given the full docket of matters both chambers are dealing with at the moment. My apologies. The calendars don't line up well. Thank you, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Kent Wentling, Policy Advisor for U.S. Senator John Barrasso. So anyway, that's kind of the update that we got there just recently. I did take a look at this draft. It doesn't have specifically in there with what we requested on primacy on an amendment to the Federal Mineral Leasing Act of 1920. So it would be good. They invited us to a call, and I would like for all of us to be on there if we could. If we can get something set up, I'll try to set up a Zoom call and we can have a discussion with Senator Barrasso's office. Okay.
Okay, the committee good with that then? All right, thanks, Bob, for digging that up. I forgot I even read that 1201, so I feel kind of bad, but yeah. So we'll just follow up with that, try to get a Zoom meeting set up, coordinate that with you guys. So the next item on the agenda, unless there's no public comment, I should ask. And Senator Lummis's office, I appreciate you coming up and bringing us up to speed on where you guys are too. So So going to the item 3 on the agenda, it's resource management plan updates. So I see we got a couple people that look like our BLM friends. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. Chairman Ide, Chairman Wharf, members of the committee, I appreciate the invitation to appear before you today to provide information about the BLM resource management plans and a little later on BLM's Wild Horse and Burro program. So I'm going to talk about 3 different resource management plans. Do you want me to do each one and then stop and wait for questions, or would you like me to just go through all 3 of them and then do questions at the end?
Yeah, if you don't mind, let's do one at a time and then
Okay.
introduce yourself too, just for the record.
Oh, yes. My apologies. Good morning. I'm Chris Kirby. I'm the acting state director for BLM Wyoming, and I'll let my colleague introduce himself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brad Purdy. I'm the senior advisor for BLM Wyoming.
Okay, well, I'll start with the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan. This planning effort, as everyone knows, has garnered high interest from stakeholders due to its diverse resource issues since BLM initiated the revision in 2011. The current RMP, approved in December of 2024, remains in full force and effect, while the office completes the current amendment process that began last October, when the agency published a notice of intent to amend the 2024 RMP and opened a 30-day public scoping period. The initial public scoping period was extended by 45 days and closed on December 18th. BLM also held a public meeting on December 3rd at the Sweetwater County Events Complex. We received approximately 13,000 public scoping comments. We've been diligently meeting with cooperating agencies to include their comments and suggestions as we finalize the RMP, and we plan to release the draft amendment in early fall and open a 60-day public comment period. So that's the general briefing. If I'll take any questions you might have now.
Chairman Coyd. Co-Chairman Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you for that update. Could you refresh the committee here on what kind of hit the 30,000 foot view of what that Rock Springs RMP, as the dust settled, what that looks like? You know, I know early on there was a lot of drama of 3 million acres out of any human contact, and then kind of got pared back. And could you kind of give us some bullet points on what that RMP looks like as far as just, grazing, recreation, how many acres? Just give us a gloss over of that, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I don't have the acres in front of me, but essentially, I think I love how you called it drama. There was a lot of 3 million acres out of, no one ever be able to access it. That's not accurate. That's totally incorrect. There's still areas wide open for recreation. All the valid existing rights for development were retained. So if you had an oil and gas lease, or if you had a mining lease, or any kind of valid existing right you had prior to it being signed, those are all still in place. So there's still oil and gas drilling happening. There's still mining happening. In fact, we've approved some. I don't have the number of APDs we've approved this year, but we continue to approve APDs in the Rock Springs field office. We actually have recently signed decision records on some trona mining. So development is continuing. So I'm really glad you asked the question, because it gives me an opportunity to highlight that the multiple use management of BLM is still occurring in the Rock Springs field office. I think one of the flashpoints was there was an addition of ACECs, or areas of critical environmental concern. And, sometimes within those, the management layers can be seen as relatively restricted. And so one of the things that we are taking a really deep dive into this amendment is actually looking at those ACECs, reevaluating them, and reducing the layers of management to the actual minimal necessary, right? So if an endangered species is already protected under some other layer of management, do we need an ACEC? Those are the kind of questions and things we're looking at. We had a lot of special recreation management areas there that, allow a lot of recreation, but sometimes could hinder development. And so looking at those as well, can those uses coexist? How do we look at those pieces? So we're really taking a look at all of those things that the public were really flashpoints for the public. But I think the final takeaway that I'd like to end the answer to this question with is There were not 3 million acres taken out of use. Development continues, recreation continues, access continues. We still have OHV use out there. You can go hiking, you can go biking. There's oil and gas development, there's mining. All the things that were occurring in the past, there's still, the coal mine is still active. So those things were not prohibited, restricted, or stopped.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that. So what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like it's status quo from where it was before all of the drama, so to speak. Can you give me a number? I mean, was there a lot of acreage taken out of multiple use or not? And the last part of that would be, when will the final RMP be stamped, so to speak, after all of the public comment? Thank you.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you. I apologize. I don't have the acres in front of me. I usually have that running chart. Are you looking those up right now? Okay, we are looking those up right now. I don't have the acres in front of me right now, but there were not significant amounts of acres taken out of the hands of multiple use and blocked from use by the public. Even the acres within like the areas of critical environmental concerns, the ACECs, those acres were not taken out of use, or they weren't, public. The public was not restricted access there. There were protections on species or certain landscapes, et cetera. But those acres were not restricted from the public accessing them. So the public was still able to access all of the acres in the Rock Springs field office. And we'll get you some numbers on the acres in a minute. But it wasn't status quo based. The 2024 RMP did not carry forward the status quo from the Green River RMP from the 90s. But it also didn't carte blanche remove all public access. Like I said, any valid existing rights, oil and gas leases, mining, et cetera, continued into the new RMP. There's still development happening. So there was a lot of rhetoric, like I think like you're pointing out, and drama around it, people thinking that, oh my gosh, 3 million acres are off limits to the public. And that was never the case. There was a very conservation focused alternative that was initially proposed because, we were under a different administration. So that conservation focus initiative really was a flashpoint for a lot of people. And the final alternative was a combination, as BLM is supposed to do, a range of alternatives, kind of a balance between conservation and use, and making sure that we're balancing out our multiple use mission. So there are not, I don't even think we have a this many number of acres are unavailable for development or unavailable for public access. The Rock Springs field office is still open to public access and open to development. And we'll get those acres for you in just a minute.
Thank you. Any
One more quick
follow-up?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you mentioned the change of administration. Things kind of went away from more conservation back to more multiple use development. I guess that's what you're inferring there, essentially, because the previous administration, I think initially it was scary. I mean, it was like, these guys are proposing taking 3 million acres out of any human contact. I mean, that's what that grabbed headlines anyway. But it looked, from what I saw, you had the original selections, A, B, and C. I can't remember, and they went with the worst one. At least the last administration did, and everybody, threw their hats in the air saying, whoa, wait a minute here. This is a big problem. Has that all been, reversed effectively? Can you give me a specific answer on that? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So the final record of decision signed in December 2024 under the last administration did not take 3 million acres out of human contact and out of use. So the final alternative, the final decision was a balanced alternative encapsulating BLM's multiple use mission. The initial in the draft, the proposed preferred alternative in the draft was much more conservation focused, but even that alternative did not take 3 million acres out of human contact. That was a kind of a narrative or a headline, but that's not actually what the plan said. So the proposed alternative is more conservation focused. The draft alternative was more conservation focused, but it never proposed to take 3 million acres out of human contact. The final decision, which was signed under the last administration, the final decision was a more balanced alternative that incorporated BLM's multiple use mission. And so I think reduced some of the conservation focus and brought it more back to that focusing on multiple uses. Did that answer your question? And then I remembered you asked me another question in the previous question. When will the final RMP amendment be signed? We'll be releasing like I said, the draft for public comment in the fall, and there'll be a 60-day public comment period, and then there's a 90-day protest period, 60-day protest period followed by a 30-day governor's consistency review. So probably next spring, just doing some quick math in my head for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr.
Davis.
Chairman. One quick question. Who is reviewing the 13,000 public comments? What's the committee composed of, I guess? That's my question.
Go ahead. Thank you. So whenever we get public comments in BLM, the field office staff or the staff working on the plans reviewing the comments, we have what's called an interdisciplinary team. The staff reviews the comments. They also coordinate with the BLM Wyoming state office, and we have been coordinating with our BLM headquarters because some of our land use planning documents are changing. As you know, the public lands conservation rule was rescinded. So some of the manuals that were in effect because of that rule have also been rescinded. So it starts with the field office staff. They review the public comments, and then we review them in light of all the current regulations and the policies that are issued by BLM headquarters. And so it's really BLM reviewing those comments, but then we circle back with the cooperators and talk to them about actually coordinating with them to develop the alternatives going forward. So, based on, okay, we got these public comments, here's a framework of what we're thinking about to move forward, meet with the cooperators, and then really take their input really seriously and kind of collaborate with them. Obviously, BLM's responsible for drafting the alternatives, but we do those based on input from our cooperators and those public comments. You're welcome.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Kirby, Mr. Purdy, thank you for coming to our committee. This whole BLM project and what you're doing now I have an interest in it personally just because I want to see the multiple use concept in our state. It drew enough attention with our previous administration that I gathered up my Sweetwater senators and we hopped a plane back to DC and tell our story in person with Director Stone Manning at the time, saying we're not just a flyover state. We're people living lives in Rock Springs, Green River, and that whole area. We'll work with you on making sure the land is preserved, taken care of, but we need to keep the economy of Southwest Wyoming going. And we worked through all of this with the help of Governor Gordon's office and others to kind of settle things down. And what I'm hearing from you now is perhaps we're at an approach using that segment of Wyoming. We got, 18 million acres of BLM land there? We're kind of at a balanced approach is what I'm hearing you say here today. Is that a correct summary?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think the final decision from December 2024 was a more balanced approach than the initial alternative that came out, the conservation focused alternative, incorporating our multiple use management. When President Trump took office and issued a number of executive orders for unleashing American energy and the national energy emergency, we also realized some of our planning, the Secretary of the Interior issued an order to review some of our plans. And when we evaluated some of our plans, like the Rock Springs RMP included, we realized we needed to also evaluate it with that new lens of focused on these new executive orders and the priorities of the administration. And so that's why, while we ended up with a multiple use record of decision in December of 2024, it's still, when we looked at the energy piece, we knew there were things we needed to reevaluate, including all of those ACECs and the kind of the special management areas to make sure that we were incorporating the administration's priorities and the executive orders.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess one of the questions that kind of just keeps coming back to me, I'm kind of long in the tooth. It's been a while since I went to school, but it always seemed like to me when we did multiple use, the key component that pulled all the multiple use together was the fact that they were supposed to be focused on conservation. And I don't know if it's if it's your opinion that or if your agency started to feel like those multiple uses that were being, taking place on BLM land, if you felt like that, initiative to make sure that that multiple use also had a component of conservation in it. Has that been lost over the time?
That's a great question. And no, it has not been lost because it is part of, resource management, landscape health is part of our multiple use mission. So no, it has not been lost. I think it's still a really important overlay with everything we do, right? I mean, we have to look at if there's endangered species. I mean, we have special, if we had bighorn sheep or mule deer, et cetera, certain populations, recreation values that are really important to the communities. We still have to make sure that there's not just don't go in the other direction and just completely destroy all that. So future generations also can't use it, can't develop it, can't recreate on it, et cetera. So the conservation piece is still there. It's part of that larger balance and part of the filter and the analysis we use when we're making decisions.
Okay, because that was the thing that kept concerning me is, I hope that we hadn't lost that component, because that was always, to me, I know when we talked about multiple use, that was always kind of the link that kind of pulled us all together, is we all had to be looking at how we conserved that land. So I'm glad that that's not the case, that we are still looking at that. So, any other questions before one more?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to back up a little bit on those dates, I need to write this down. So you've got all the public comments now, and those are being reviewed. And in this fall, you said, could you kind of run me in, do you have any specific dates that you can deliver right now so everybody that's interested in this kind of understands the timeline and when the final product is going to be out after your review of the comments? And if nobody likes it, what happens next, kind of a thing? You know what I mean? Thank you.
It is drafted right now. Reviews will be releasing we'll release the draft RMPs. Public scoping is the people are here to do this. What do draft RMPs what outlines the alternatives, the regional alternatives, and the analysis. We'll be releasing that in early fall for a 60-day public comment. So let's say I don't have exact dates. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Review all the comments, go through the documents, and work on getting the final. And there's a lot of, like everyone does, there's a lot of internal layers and processes. The field office, the ID team works on that, but then we also have to go to headquarters and get headquarters approval for that. So I'm anticipating that would take about a month to 6 weeks, thinking about Christmas being in the middle of there. So then the next thing we would do is we go out for a 60-day protest period. So let's say if we're January 15th, that puts us to March 15th, and then we would review that. And then there's a 30-day governor's consistency review. So we're probably sometime in next spring, late spring. I don't have exact dates because those dates will get triggered once we get the draft out on the street. We could release the draft before October 1st. It just depends on how, all the layers of review that have to happen. So we're looking at sometime next spring. I don't have dates certain that I can provide to the committee here.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you for
Yep.
reiterating that in a little more detail. One last question. Who are the cooperators that you refer to? Thank you.
The cooperators are state and local government agencies. So, the governor's office, the departments, the county commissioners, and the mayors and local governments. So,
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go on to the next one?
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. The Newcastle RMP. So the Newcastle, Nebraska RMP revision began in July of 2023 with the publication of the Notice of Intent in the Federal Register. BLM opened a 45-day public scoping period and held 4 public scoping meetings. Those meetings occurred in August at the Weston County Senior Center in Newcastle, the Crook County Courthouse in Sundance. A virtual meeting was also held, and then we held a meeting at the county fairgrounds in Lusk for Niobrara County. Public scoping period ended in August, at the end of August 2023. We released the draft RMP in November of 2024 and opened a 90-day public comment period, which was extended an additional 30 days, and it closed on March 17th, 2025. BLM held public meetings on the draft EIS in January 2025 in Newcastle, Sundance, and Lusk, Wyoming, along with meetings in Scottsbluff and Valentine, Nebraska, and we held 1 virtual meeting on the draft environmental impact statement. We recently updated the final Newcastle, Nebraska RMP to reflect changes made in the 2025 Greater Sage-Grouse plans, and the final RMP was uploaded to EPA last week and will publish later this week.
Any questions? Oh, go ahead, Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's going to be published like directly. And then what happens after that? Is there a public comment period on that, or is that final and a done deal? Thank you.
All the public comment has been done. It is the final decision. So the final decision has gone to the EPA desk and should be published. We obviously don't have control of EPA, but should be published anytime. Actually, it says later this week on my notes. Probably Friday.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any substantial changes to it from the existing one? I guess would be my question.
Go ahead.
I'm going to allow Mr. Purdy here to comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think with, the changes made with the 2025 Sage-Grouse plans, I think there will be, like I said, they'll be in conformance with what we've already seen, 2025 Sage-Grouse plans, but that will impact that document.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the sage-grouse, now you've got my curiosity up here. How will it different from the states? I guess is my question. Or where will the state be playing in that, since we are kind of the lead?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So we did collaborate at the BLM Wyoming level and at the Department of Interior level. We did collaborate with the states, and this was a kind of across the West. We did collaborate with the states to get to the final alternative last December and sign the decision document, the decision record last December. And so the states' maps are what are incorporated into that plan, and those are the maps that we refer to. And even as they get updated throughout time, we continue to incorporate them via maintenance actions and refer to those maps.
Follow-up?
One last follow-up. With all the wildfires and stuff like that, some of those have altered a little bit. That's why I was asking that question in there. So thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, last we have the Buffalo RMP. BLM published a notice of intent to amend the 2024 Buffalo RMP on July 8th, 2025. On November 18th, 2025, the House of Representatives passed House Joint Resolution 130, providing congressional disapproval of the 2024 Buffalo RMP Record of Decision under the Congressional Review Act. The President signed House Joint Resolution 130 into public law on December 11th, 2025. In accordance with this law, BLM published a notice of termination for the Buffalo RMP planning effort on June 4th, 2026. The 2015 Buffalo RMP, as amended in 2019 by court order from the Western Organization of Resource Councils versus BLM, is now in full force and effect. And I'll be happy to answer any questions on that.
Any questions? Go ahead, Co-Chairman Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the Buffalo RMP and the executive order, explain that to me. Did that completely nullify the Buffalo RMP? Is that bottom line and it's over with effectively until the next administration if they want to reverse that executive order? Can you help me with that? Thank you.
Thank you. So the executive order did not nullify the RMP. The executive order, with Unleashing American Energy, and then the subsequent secretarial order asked us to review the Buffalo RMP. It was one of the ones they asked us to review. The Buffalo RMP was actually nullified by a congressional, so via a law, so a congressional review act. That's how it was nullified, was through a law and not through an executive order. And so essentially, yeah, the 2015 RMP as amended by the 2019 RMP is the one that is in full force and effect.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. We're a little ahead of schedule. I don't know if you guys want to take a break real quick. Should we take a 10-minute break? Or do you want to keep rolling? I don't care. Okay, let's keep rolling then. We'll move on to the next one. And did she leave? I thought she's gonna be here. Come on up. We're gonna talk about the wild horse discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
public comment on the last topic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Get ahead of myself. Sorry. Is there any public comment on that, on the RMP stuff? Thank you. Introduce yourself too, please.
Chairman's, members of the committee, I'm Josh Metton, Wyoming Field Manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Just wanted to quickly bring up with the Rock Springs RMP, sports people's a coalition of sports people have been working on both the broad RMP and also the Greater Little Mountain area for over a decade now. As we've been looking at the amendment and having discussions with other stakeholders, what we're noticing is there's pretty broad agreement that we don't want this to continue to be a prolonged process. People want to see this RMP get put to bed and just move forward. And so we've taken the time to review scoping comments from other key stakeholders in the RMP, have identified some opportunities that we think are going to really help address the concerns surrounding losing opportunities for development while also conserving wildlife. And I think this is a good example of how Wyomingites can come together, find solutions, and chart a path forward. So appreciate the BLM being here today and the work that they're doing to review all those comments on that. And then just to quickly on the Newcastle RMP, we submitted comments on that as well. And one of the big things with the Newcastle RMP that we were looking at is the fact that landscape has it's a large amount of land, not a lot of public access, and looking at those parcels that are in existence that currently have public access or are currently adjacent to area parcels that the Game and Fish Department has secured public access agreements with private landowners. Those are really, really important to sports people. And so really appreciated what the BLM did with looking at updating their disposal criteria in the Newcastle RMP. And we're excited to see how that came out. But that leads us into some potential further discussions on acquisitions, disposals, things like that later in the meeting today. So thank you. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, committee. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, Josh,
ahead,
can I have
sir.
you say your last name again, please?
Sorry, Josh Metton,
Metton.
Wyoming Field Manager for the
Yeah.
Theodore Roosevelt Conservation
Thank you.
Partnership.
And just a quick question. I'm not sure that the public access issue goes away. You have a suggestion there?
Oh, with Newcastle?
Right.
I was
Thank
just
you.
bringing it up, highlighting that there are existing parcels in the Newcastle RMP that have high value, that because they currently provide public access or are adjacent to game and fish parcels with public access, that's created a larger area for sports people and the public to be able to get out and recreate, especially if they don't have access to private land. And we appreciated how the BLM included criteria looking at the lands available for disposal that would kind of maintain access to those parcels. And I'll follow up with, I think there's another discussion topic later in this meeting talking about that topic, but just the importance to sports people for having access to public lands being something that is just critical in the state.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We got one more quick question, Co-Chairman Ide.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Metkin. Did I pronounce that right?
Metten.
Metkin? Metten?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Would you say do you work for the conservation? I didn't get the first part of the group you're with, and where are you from, actually?
Yeah, thank you. Apologies for not explaining that. I live in Laramie, Wyoming, and I work for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Our mission is to guarantee all Americans quality places to hunt and fish.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
ERCP. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda then. Or you guys still want to move forward? I do. Okay. The next one up is the wild horse discussion. Have our LSO staff come bring us up to speed. Talise?
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, Legislative Attorney, LSO. I'm joined by my colleague Savannah Collins, who is also Legislative Attorney at LSO, and will be presenting the topic summary that provides an overview of the history of wild horses and horse slaughter in the United States. I'll begin by discussing wild horses, and then Ms. Collins will present on horse slaughter. So, starting from the beginning, horses disappeared from North America after the Ice Age and were reintroduced by Spanish explorers in the late 15th century. Horses eventually became essential to ranching, farming, and Native American culture. By the 1890s, however, advances in farming equipment and a declining cattle economy reduced the need for horses, leading many owners to abandon them on the range and contributing to a wild horse population estimated at approximately 2 million wild horses. To reduce the wild horse population, wild horses were captured for military use during World War I, and horses were used in the pet food industry after World War II. This caused the wild horse population to decline dramatically, reaching roughly 18,000 wild horses by the 1960s. Public concern over the treatment and capture of wild horses led to the passage of the Wild Horse Anti-Act of 1959, which prohibits using aircraft and motor vehicles to hunt and capture wild horses on public land. Violations of this act is punishable by fines of up to $5,000 for individuals and $10,000 for corporations or organizations, imprisonment for up to six months or both. The Wild Horse and Anti-Act does not apply when the BLM or the Forest Service uses helicopters to herd wild horses for capture under the Wild and Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act. Congress enacted the Wild and Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act in 1971, which declared wild horses and burros to be an integral part of the natural system of the public lands and required the BLM and the Forest Service to protect and manage wild free roaming horses and burros as components of the public lands in a manner that is designed to achieve and maintain a thriving natural ecological balance on the public lands. The BLM manages wild horses through designated herd management areas. There are currently 175 herd management areas across 10 western states. Wyoming has 14 herd management areas covering nearly 5 million acres. For each herd management area, the BLM establishes an appropriate management level, which is the population range of wild horses that the land can sustainably support while balancing other mandated uses of those lands, including habitat for wildlife and livestock. To determine appropriate management levels and whether those levels should be achieved through the removal of excess animals or other management actions, the BLM is required to maintain an inventory of wild horses and burros within each herd management area. As of March 1st, 2026, Wyoming had an estimated 7,165 wild horses and 0 burros. The combined state appropriate management level is 2,566 wild horses and burros. 8 out of Wyoming's 14 herd management areas were above appropriate management levels, as shown by Table 1 on page 4 of the topic summary. When necessary to achieve appropriate management levels, the BLM relies on a combination of management tools, including fertility control and removal. The Act directs BLM to remove excess animals in the following priority order. 1, humanely destroy old, sick, or lame animals. 2, capture and offer adoptable excess animals for private adoption when demand exists. And 3, dispose of any remaining excess animals for which no adoption demand exists in the most humane and cost-efficient manner possible. The federal adoption program has facilitated the adoption of more than 290,000 wild horses and burros since 1971, including 4,330 adoptions in 2025. To adopt a wild horse or burro, an individual must be at least 18 years old, have adequate facilities and resources to care for the animal, have no prior convictions for the inhumane treatment of animals, and have not obtained more than 4 wild horses or burros within the past 12 months unless authorized in writing by the BLM. Adopters enter into an agreement with the BLM with specified conditions and are responsible for the animal's care. However, title to the wild horses or burros remains with the federal government until a certificate of title is issued by the BLM. After the adopter has provided proper care and complied with the agreement for 1 year, the BLM then issues a certificate of title to the adopter. Upon the issuance of the certificate of title, federal ownership of the wild horse and burro ends, and the animal loses its status as a wild horse or burro and is no longer protected by the Act. The Act also authorizes the sale of excess wild horses and burros that are either more than 10 years old or have been offered unsuccessfully for adoption at least 3 times. Eligible animals may be sold through auctions, livestock sale yards, or other livestock selling facilities until all excess animals offered for sale have been sold or at the appropriate management level and all areas occupied by wild horses and burros has been attained. The BLM requires a purchaser of an excess animal to fill out an application and certify that they will provide humane care for the animals and will not knowingly sell or transfer animals for slaughter or processing into commercial products. Once an animal is sold, it loses its status as a wild free-roaming horse or burro and is no longer protected under the Act. In 2025, the BLM sold 3,718 wild horses and burros. Although federal law authorizes the destruction and sale of certain excess wild horses and burros, Congress has generally prohibited the BLM from using appropriated funds to destroy healthy, unadopted wild horses and burros in the care of the BLM or its contractors, or for the sale of wild horses and burros that results in their destruction for processing into commercial products. The Act prohibits several types of conduct related to wild horses and burros. There's a list of the prohibited acts on the bottom of page 8 to the top of page 9. Any person who commits a prohibited act is subject to a fine of not more than $2,000 or imprisonment for not more than 1 year, or both for each violation. So now there are also some provisions of Wyoming law that provides additional protections and cost recovery mechanisms related to wild horses and burros beyond federal law. Wyoming law makes the willful and malicious killing of a wild horse without legal justification a misdemeanor punishable by a fine of up to $750, imprisonment for up to 6 months, or both. In addition, Wyoming law addresses the costs associated with wild horses and burros that regularly stray from federal lands onto non-federal lands. Wyoming law authorizes the Office of State Lands and Investments to notify the Secretary of Interior or the Secretary of Agriculture of the grazing costs attributable to wild horses and burros that have not been removed by the BLM or the Forest Service and request reimbursement of those costs as determined by statutory calculation. Wyoming law also authorizes the Attorney General to take action to compel the BLM or the Forest Service to remove excess wild horses from non-federal lands and authorizes the governor to enter into cooperative agreements with federal, state, tribal, and local agencies to address the long-term management of the wild horse populations that exceed appropriate management levels. And Mr. Chairman, I'll now let Savannah present on horse slaughter.
Thank you. Go ahead, Savannah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will continue where Talise picked up or left off. Prior to 2005, horses were available for slaughter in the United States as a product that could be used for human food following an inspection. Federal law requires slaughterhouses must be inspected by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in order to operate in the United States. In 2005, the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration, and related agencies Appropriations Act of 2006 prohibited the use of any appropriated funds for paying inspectors to inspect horses under the Federal Meat Inspection Act. This restriction has continued ever since, except in 2012, when the appropriation did not make it through and was picked up in the following year. The Food Safety and Inspection Service subsequently issued an interim final rule following the 2005 appropriation prohibition, where people or businesses could pay for inspection services for the slaughter of horses. This rule was immediately challenged on the basis the rule had been implemented too quickly without the proper review. The rules were suspended and the court permanently enjoined the Food Safety and Inspection Service from implementing the rule. In April of 2025, the USDA repealed this interim final rule. In 2007, Texas and Illinois enacted legislation banning the slaughter of horses if the horse meat would be used for human consumption. These two states were home to the 3 remaining slaughterhouses which slaughtered horses in the U.S., as most had closed without inspectors under the 2025 appropriation prohibition. 2 slaughterhouses filed suit saying these prohibitions went against the Federal Meat Inspection Act because the federal government had preempted the topic. And these cases are substantially similar. The 5th and 7th Circuit Courts of Appeals ruled against the slaughterhouses, finding the state prohibitions were constitutional and therefore prohibited any further horse slaughter in these states. As of June 17th, 2026, 12,225 horses have been exported from the United States to Mexico and 73 to Canada. Mexico and Canada generally export the meat to the European Union and Japan, where human consumption of horse meat is more common. However, these countries usually do not want U.S. horse meat because horses are treated with medications typically avoided in livestock, which will be used for human consumption. Additionally, with the rise of New World screwworm cases, USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins has suspended the export of various species to Mexico, including equines for slaughter, among other purposes. In Wyoming statute deals with horse slaughter in the context of estray animals. Estrays are animals that are running at large with an unknown or unclear owner. Estrays may be taken up, then reported to the livestock board, which can then dispose of these animals if the owner is not found. The memo provides a more detailed explanation of this process, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the process. In 2010, Wyoming State Representative Sue Wallace brought a bill which amended the definition of disposal to mean to sell, send to slaughter, or destroy the animal. Feral livestock may also be disposed of in a similar process under Wyoming Statute 1148-102. And I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Go ahead. Go Chairman Ide.
Thank you, Mr. There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. On your report, Ms. Hanson, is on page, let's see, page 4. You've got Wyoming's wild horse and burro population, 0 burros and 7,100 65 horses, and the number is supposed to be 2566, I think, if I'm reading that right. So we're over allocated by about 5,000 wild horses. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, yes. So those numbers were from BLM's website. And so it estimated the inventory in Wyoming at 7,165, and their appropriate management level for the entire state, is supposed to be 2,566.
Follow up?
Go ahead, follow up.
Maybe, I don't know who can answer this question, maybe somebody with the BLM potentially that's here. How long has that number been going on, and how do we get it down to the allocation that it should be? Buddy, who polices that, I guess, and who monitors it, and what happens on a daily
Director
basis
Kirby,
to try to
did you want to come up and
get those
tackle that?
numbers?
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we were, I think, prepared to talk about this when it's our time on the agenda, but we can certainly talk about it now if you would like.
Whatever you want.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, that might as well talk about it now.
Okay. All right, so I believe your question was who polices it? How long has the number been going on? How long have we been above AML, appropriate management level? I can't speak to how long we've been above appropriate management level. To my knowledge, we probably have not achieved that in Wyoming for many, many years. And it's, it's essentially a numbers game, right? The horse gatherers are pretty expensive. We have to get funding for them every year. And the BLM runs the gather program from the national level, right? So every year they figure out, okay, this is how much money we were allocated by Congress to do horse gathers this year. And they have to, divide it up between all the states that have, that have horses. I think all states right now are currently above appropriate management level, all states that have wild horses. And so they have to divvy up that money among all the states that need to do gathers that year. And so there's never enough funding to go around to go out and gather all the horses that we need to gather. So that's really the long and short of it. Is we do monitor and police it, but we need, the money and resources to go out and do the gathers, and we can only do the gathers that are approved each year. And part of the challenge with those is we also, once we gather them, we have to place them in holding. And so in the BLM system for the holding in the corrals, there's only so many spaces available until we adopt out more horses. So, and I believe last year they said in 2025, we placed 8,080 animals into private care. And just in Wyoming alone, we're over by AML by 4,600. I think Nevada is way worse than us. There's obviously herds in Utah and Colorado, some in Idaho, not as much, and then Arizona as well. So we're over AML in all of our states. Placing 8 to 10,000 horses a year is not going to get us there.
Follow up?
Quick follow-up. So really the number allocation depends on whether you have the resources to get down to that number. I mean, I know that you guys police, ranchers' AUMs on their cattle, and if they're over their allotment, then there's usually repercussions. Do you have, I don't know, any way to help us make this number work better? And do you have a lot of people complaining that they're getting, their forage is getting overgrazed if they have a grazing lease with wild horses? Can you give me a little backdrop on that, if you would? Thank you.
Go ahead, Dirk.
Thank you. And I'll comment, and then I'll probably refer to Mr. Purdy as well for additional comments. Yes, we receive comments on it all the time. Our hands are tied really with how many horses we can gather this year. We are planning on gathering 1,000 wild horses in the Red Desert Complex this year. We have another gather that we were planning that is currently held up in court. So, the down in the Rock Springs, and I can't remember all of the herds, but I know it's Salt Wells, Adobe Town, Great Divide. I think all of those, we had gathers planned for those. That plan is currently held up in court right now, so we're not able to do any of those gathers, right? So there's a number of factors at play here beyond just, I mean, yeah, if we could manage it from the state office in BLM, Wyoming, we could request the funding every year from headquarters, go out and say, this is what we need to gather. This is our 2-year plan or 5-year plan or whatever to get to AML. But there's so many factors at play that are really out of our control that we really try to work with headquarters to prioritize our gathers and recognizing we're part of a larger system competing with the other states. And then also the placement is always an issue. Mr. Purdy, anything I should add to that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think Director Kirby got it perfectly correct. Staffing, funding, holding capacity, that's what drives the whole thing. All those things have to line up for us to be able to gather horses. Several past administrations have attempted to get us down to AML nationally. I think that's a heavy lift. Horses are very, very good at making more horses.
And I guess I will add, I will speak for this administration is also pushing and working with Congress. I know in headquarters, they are working on seeking additional funding and really putting attention on this. And some of our staff here in BLM, Wyoming is actually supporting the headquarters team to try to get some traction around some of that. So that effort is definitely continuing under this administration.
Go ahead, follow up.
Sorry to ask so many questions, but I want to understand so we can tell our colleagues back in Cheyenne what we talked about over the interim. On the fertility side of things, is that effective? And, you would think that would be more of an area that you would want to focus instead of the gathers. As Mr. Purdy said, horses make more horses. And can you explain the fertility program a little bit while you're here? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not a scientist, so a lot of what I'm going to say is very anecdotal, but I think in herds that when we have herds that are at AML, the fertility program is relatively effective. And there's a number of different methods of fertility. Obviously, sometimes in the gathers, what we do is we will geld some of the studs and release them back into the herd, right? So that helps. We also use, I don't know the terms, but we use some form of birth control. And sorry, I don't know the scientific name, some form of birth control for the mares. It's proven to be effective in some situations, but it doesn't last, right? So maybe it lasts a year or 3 years, 5 years, et cetera, but it's still, it loses effectiveness over time. So that's one of the methods we use as well. And then some of it is just, not gathering, but maybe out darting with this birth control as well. So that obviously depends on actually getting the horse, getting the medicine injected. And so there's various methods. The fertility method, though, fertility control really is not effective until we get to AML because there's just so many horses out there on the range. And even, like I said, in every gather, we release a number of studs back onto the range that have been gelded, and that does help. But all of these, there's constantly foals being born all the time. So it's a constant, again, there's time, money, employees, resources, et cetera, and we don't have a lot of energy around that piece. Anything to add, Mr. Purdy?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the only thing I would add is I think fertility control can be effective, but it very much depends on the nature of the herd. A herd like McCullough Peaks, Pryor Mountains, just north of us in Montana, those herds are used to seeing people. So it's easy to approach that horse. It's easy to apply that darting. You go to a place like Little Colorado, White Mountain, Adobe Town, places like that, those horses aren't familiar with human beings. So they're going to be a lot more skittish. They're going to run away. If we can't get within the range to effectively dart the mares, we're going to have that problem. I am aware that for several years, Pryor Mountains, McCullough Peaks, we have been pretty good at being able to maintain that AML. Why? Well, those horses, again, they're used to seeing humans. We don't need to do helicopter gathers. We can gather them up using traps. We can effectively do fertility control. Other herds are significantly more difficult.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Representative Davis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, would you say that we're in dire situation with wild horses right now?
Go ahead.
Your comment, please.
Thank you. My comment would be that we are over AML. we would love to have more energy around working towards getting us to AML.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, with the drought situation that is affecting the state of Wyoming, by having too many numbers, what they're doing to the environment, what are we doing for the horses? We do not develop water out there. At least the BLM that I'm working around don't develop water or resources to take care of these horses. So as far as the health of the horse itself is in danger, in jeopardy. I mean, we have to take some type of drastic measurements here. I don't know what you guys have in mind, but I know as a permittee with the BLM, we have had to take drastic measurements running cattle out there, hauling water out there, reducing our numbers, changing the rotations and stuff like that. And all those things seem to bring the horses onto these horse-free permits. So it seems to me that there has got to be something that we can do through an emergency or something like that. And there has to be a fund set up somewhere within the federal government to address this. I mean, there's a lot more at stake. When not only with the domestic use of the permits out there, but the wildlife issues out there. I mean, the horses are driving the wildlife off what little water is out there. They're very aggressive. So it seems to me we're at a kind of a catastrophic situation here, just like the drought, not seen before in this state. So there has to be a solution that we need to get to sometime soon here, like very soon. Would that be a fair assumption?
There's the question. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I guess I'll start with there's not a fund out there that exists for that. So that fund does not exist. We are monitoring our herds this summer, in light of the drought, in light of that. There have been situations in Utah and Nevada that have arisen. Nevada almost every year has, because they have way less water than us, right? Almost every year has an emergency gather. And that again impacts the larger, there's a whole system, right? How many we can gather, how many we can hold. And so, whatever we gather in Nevada, we have to place in holding. It also reduces the gathers in other states. Utah this year is experiencing exactly what you're describing with some of their herds. They're actually going into starvation and there's not enough water. So Utah is, I know, conducting, I think they're going to start pretty soon, an emergency gather, right? So that again impacts the numbers. We are monitoring our herds here. We haven't found any of the severity yet, but we are keeping an eye on that because then we will alert headquarters to that. And then that could take away from our Red Desert gather, right? If we have to go out and gather 500 horses in a different herd, suddenly we're gathering 500 less at Red Desert. So the money that we have right now is the money that exists. There's not an emergency fund that exists in place, and the limits on the system don't change based on the drought. But I'm really glad you brought it up because we are all monitoring for that, and I think it's really important to consider. And it's part of this year what's impacting us across the whole BLM system, not just in Wyoming.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then you alluded to a comment, about horses making horses. So would you say horses are considered a renewable resource and maybe we need to look at another solution for this and the overpopulation?
Thank you. So the solutions that I have the ability and authority to look at in BLM Wyoming are the ones that are defined to us by law and then the direction we're given by headquarters. So if, I think the other, if Congress chooses to look at things differently and act something differently, they can, but I don't have authority to go outside of what, the law currently says, what our direction is and the limits of our funding.
Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, on this emergency fund, Director, how did Utah get that emergency money? And maybe a follow-up that my colleague can answer as well. Are we at that emergency status now? I'm not sure. I'm trying to define that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So again, it wasn't from an emergency fund. It was just from the fund that exists for gathers. And so and I don't know the details in Utah. I just know they do have an emergency gather going on because we had a meeting recently about how many horses we're all going to gather across the states this year. And so it's within that limited funding, that that capped funding that we have. So it was not emergency fund. They were able to demonstrate a larger need than, I mean, we're still doing 1,000 horse gather this year. We're planning on doing 1,000 horse gather in the Red Desert. We're still going to do that. They were able to demonstrate that need. And again, it's every year, all the states kind of look at what they need to do for their gathers. So we have to divide it amongst all of our states. And so they didn't tap an emergency fund source. That was one of the reasons I believe they sped up their gather, because they were concerned about horses were already actively dying on the range.
Thank you. And I don't know if this is fair, you were kind of called up for a question. Did you have a presentation? You had something you wanted to present to the committee, Director Kirby?
Sure. And I think I've said most of it already, but I can
Well, yeah,
certainly.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity to present what you came prepared to do.
Sure. Let's see. I think I already talked about nationally, the BLM placed 8,080 animals into private care in 2025 via adoption, sales, and transfers. Currently estimates the population of horses and burros on BLM administered land at 85,466 animals. So the problem is large.
Yeah.
BLM Wyoming is planning to remove approximately 1,000 wild horses in the Red Desert Complex this year, which includes Antelope Hills, Crooks Mountain, Green Mountain, Lost Creek, and Stewart Creek herd management areas in Wyoming. And then the other thing I did want to put a plug in, we're aware that you're planning on visiting the Honor Farm later today. We really like to say how much we value this partnership with the state of Wyoming and the Department of Corrections. The training that the wild horses get at this facility is phenomenal, and it's really the incredible adoption rates we have there during our auctions. Almost all the horses always get adopted, and that is unheard of at our auctions. So it's a really incredible program, and we just wanted to thank Warden Moffett, Associate Warden Thompson, the staff, and the horse trainers at the Honor Farm for their work and dedication to the program. It's a really great program.
Thank you.
And then we'll take any additional questions you might have.
Looks like Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, thank you for your comments. Very informative. I'm still trying to come back because I can see that we all need this answer, but all have the same idea as to where it's coming from. Are you aware of any alternative funding sources, or do you have any idea how we could creatively come up with some help, especially this year with additional gathering?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So again, I'm not aware of any alternative funding sources. I don't think they exist. I referred earlier, the administration, I know our headquarters people and people even up in the Assistant Secretary of Land and Minerals, they are actually actively working on bringing attention to this program and trying to coordinate with Congress, which is the appropriate level where it happens. It shouldn't happen at this level here, to get a significant financial investment in this program, because they're very aware of the situation. I think the benefit rate we have right now in the Department of Interior is we have some key people from Wyoming who are high up in the department who are actually sounding this alarm and raising this to people's attention. So that's the actions I'm aware working on, but there's no alternative funding source right now. But I know there's a lot of energy around collaborating with Congress to figure out a way to really infuse some funding into this program.
Okay. I had a question, and it's mainly why I asked this topic to be brought forward, but I was under the understanding, I was told that Congress added the horses to the Good Neighbor Authority. Have you heard any talk about that?
Thank you. I need to go back and look. I know they added recreation. I don't know if they added horses. I know locally in Wyoming, we've had that discussion, and I think BLM Wyoming would be amenable if we have parameters and guidelines under which to do it. I think we would definitely be amenable to doing that. I think there's some complicating factors because they still have to be put in holding somewhere. And so right now we're footing the bill for that. And I think using Good Neighbor Authority might transfer that bill to the state. And I don't know that that's where we want to go, but I think we're definitely amenable to the discussions. I don't think it was added to Good Neighbor Authority, though. I think it was just recreation. Okay.
See, and that's what I was told was it was a Good Neighbor Authority that they had been brought under that umbrella. And the main reason I bring that up, I believe I heard you correct. The number of horses exceeds the objective in all states. So, I mean, I guess I know for a long time this has been a problem, and I want to kind of get it fixed. I know we've met with past directors of the BLM, talked to them. I know that it's very labor intensive, but I think it's time that we start looking at other alternatives. Obviously, what we're doing isn't working right now, and I do know that horses are they're very protective of the water sources, and so they tend to keep all the wildlife away from the water, and it really is problematic when we are in a drought situation and we have horses that are over objective. But I guess one of the things that I wanted to address is this idea. I've been to the Honor Farm before. I don't know if any of the other committees been there, but I can tell you I'm sold on the program. I would like to see that program developed and expanded elsewhere, because I think there's, and it is labor intensive, but that's one reason why we wanted to have it here, is we wanted to talk with some of our tribal members and see if there's not some interest with the tribes to maybe look at some of their heritage. They used to go back and gather horses. I know guys that are still alive that actually that's what they did. They would go gather horses in the summer. They'd break them and they'd sell them in the fall. And I think we need to think outside the box. But I guess that's the one thing I would like to challenge the BLM to work with our committee to come up with some solutions, because I seriously think we need to revisit it. And what we're doing right now is clearly not working. And I believe Wyoming's always, been in a leadership role. And as you mentioned, Director Kirby, we currently have pretty good influence with this administration. And I think we should take advantage of that opportunity. So I guess that's something I would ask is, what can we do to work with you to help address this problem? If you have any ideas.
Thank you. I think what I will do is kind of communicate that up through my chain of command and my channels, and just alert them that you are interested in partnering with us. And that probably would be the best. That's, that would be kind of the thing within my authority.
Okay. And I just know Representative Wallace, Sue Wallace, I remember she was very active in trying to get a slaughter plant started again. And I would like to kind of pick up where she left off and see if we can't do that. I mean, I don't think that's the primary objective, but I do think that it's a resource that could be put to good use. And I remember when the director from the BLM a couple years ago told us that they were in New Mexico and they asked the fourth graders how they would fix the problem. And he reported to us, it was the ag committee that was meeting with him. And he said the fourth graders in New Mexico said, slaughter them, make them into a usable product. And so I know that's not palatable to some people, but I do think that that's a resource that could be very beneficial. Times are tough. The economy is such that maybe there might be some market for that. But Representative Davis, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Comment?
And just to tag on to your comments, there is a certain percentage of those horses out there that are, how should I say, have the possibility of being adopted, but a larger percentage of the horses are a utility crop. And that's why we need to look at something other than adoption. Perhaps just like you're talking about, we need to revisit the slaughter situation for these horses. Not only for the wild ones, but there's such a thing as the domestic ones too, that have a utility value that at a certain point, there's nothing you can do with a horse. So we need to be able to afford our
horse people another alternative to it.
And I think that, and I'll let Mr. Purdy speak in just a moment. I mean, that requires a congressional action, so that's out of our purview and out of our authority. And I will say we do have sale authority that for horses over 10 years old or that have been put up for adoption 3 times and haven't been adopted successfully, we do have sale authority for them. So that it does exist in the program. Mr. Purdy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, as your Legislative Services Office did point out, euthanizing wild horses is within the original law. And that, of course, is blocked by a budget rider by Congress for BLM. So, when asked by Director Tracy Stone Manning what I thought, I did say we should follow the law as it was written. And we're not doing that. So that's just, something for everybody to digest there.
Well, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Purdy. And it looks like Senator Doxter.
Mr. Chairman, a quick summary on what we're missing. And I know it's a nutshell summary, but what are we missing when we're not following the laws?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we're not allowed to euthanize excess wild horses. That is in the law.
Okay.
It's been in the law since its inception.
Congressional act to get that reinstated, but I guess I think I get the sense that the committee's willing to commit if there's anything we can do to help push this, because I do understand, I mean, in the position you're in, you can't really change the law. That's what we do. But if you can help connect us with the powers that be, I think you got a committee that's willing to roll up their sleeves and help try to rectify this problem, because it's not just our state. That's what I know, is it's west-wide. Go ahead, Senator Doxter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the thought is, we go forward, maybe we have, and I'm not going to put her on the spot, Senator Lemus is field rep here, but we've got others. I mean, that's where I start. I go to my field reps, and a lot of times it ends up sitting in a meeting in DC. And if you folks all want to get together, and we start with our field reps, and then maybe back to DC and say, here's our situation, here's our problem. Ultimately, it's going to involve some money, but problem's not going to go away. Willing to help work on this, either at our committee level, but starting with our field reps, then up from there. Let's not walk away with that without some plan that let's get this tackled.
Is that a motion?
I don't know that, I don't think Mr. Chairman, I don't think it needs a motion right now, but I'm happy to start working with these folks out of their office and the field reps and saying, where's our starting point?
Okay, Senator Ide, Co-Chairman Ide.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, I was kind of going along those same lines there too. And, we passed those resolutions, in committee last year or in session this year. And, maybe with everybody here, would it be beneficial to put some pressure on with a resolution here, amending that act to allow euthanization of the excess horses? That would get the conversation started, kind of like what we are with our royalty share and our, leasing primacy on federal minerals. Do you think that that's something that would help move the needle to get people to take action? You, at the director, thank you.
Go ahead.
It's not really appropriate for us to comment on legislative action, right? So I think whatever actions you deem appropriate, the thing I will do is communicate this conversation up my chain of command.
Yes, I appreciate that. Representative Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe you can't refresh my memory here, but at one time there was a lawsuit over there in the Rock Springs grazing and could you give me some more detail about that, how that went? And I know that was a state action and everything like that. And what was accomplished there? Because that was kind of an emergency situation at that time also.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I'll allow Mr. Purdy to add anything I might miss. So I'm trying to remember the whole history off the top of my head, but yes, there was a consent decree with the Rock Springs Grazing Association that our horses, that, BLM wild horses could be on their lands. That decree was rescinded. I cannot remember what year, in the last 3 to 4 years, possibly. In the meantime, we did an RMP amendment just for the wild horse and burro management in the Rock Springs field office. We were ready to, that decision record had been signed. We were ready to start a gather to zero out the herds. And so instead of, they would be called HA herd areas, not herd management areas, because we would zero out the herds. We were sued over that plan, and we are still in litigation over that. So we're currently in the middle of litigation and not moving forward with that.
Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, my boss nailed it.
All right. Well, I'll let you guys go sit back, but don't leave, because there may be some more questions that come up. But we're gonna move on down. We kind of got out of order a little bit. The next on the agenda was the Office of State Lands and Investments.
So to finish up what they were doing, jumped in the middle.
I thought they did, but
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thanks for having me here today. My name is Ben Bump. I'm Assistant Director at the Office of State Lands and Investments. Director Barry sends her regards. She's up in North Dakota attending the National Association of State Trust Lands Summer Conference, so she couldn't be here today. As LSO mentioned in their presentation briefly, that OSLI plays a role in the state wild horse statute in 1130-115, specifically in subsection C. And what that essentially does is that upon the determination of the governor that there's been a failure or refusal of the feds to remove wild horses that regularly stray onto affected non-federal areas, that the Office of State Lands and Investments will send an invoice, essentially, a bill, for the cost of those grazing horses on those affected non-federal lands. And it goes on to lay out a calculation to figure that up, to provide that invoice. And the first step in it is to determine the total area of the herd management area and what percentage of those are affected non-federal lands. Then to using the BLM's data, as you've seen in LSO's presentation, use that data to determine the forage in the animal unit month consumed by the wild horses in that area. And then to multiply that forage by the state lease rates, the state grazing and agricultural lease rates, first for the amount of horses up to the high AML level at the same rate as the state leases, and then for horses above that high AML level, 3 times the state rate. So on the table that I've provided you, you can see a graphic representation of what that calculation looks like, and what we would use as an example if we were to send this invoice. And so you can walk across that table and see the acreage figures for each one of the different herd management areas. You see a calculation of the percentage of those that are state. And this is just to mention that in the statute, affected non-federal lands are defined as the state, municipal, and county lands that are within that boundary. There aren't any municipal or county lands in there, so it is essentially just the state acres that are inside those boundaries. You then see the current estimated numbers out of the 2026 figures, and then the 2 separate calculations. So essentially what those calculations are is taking that state percentage times the number of the high AML or the amount over the high AML, multiplying it by a horse conversion factor of 1.25 times 12 months and times the current state grazing rate, which is 644 in AUM, or in the high level case, 3 times that, which would be $19.32 in AUM. So you have those for each one of the different herd management areas there, and then the totals at the bottom. So that's an example of what we would send if we were sending this invoice this year. And that's essentially the role we play within the statute. Happy to stand for any questions.
Representative Davis, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assistant Director, could you tell me, have we ever sent a bill forth?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, no, we have not.
Go ahead.
Mr.
Follow
Chairman,
up.
is there a reason why we have not?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, we haven't had the determination given to us that it's time to send the bill.
Who makes that determination, if you would?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Worf, or Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Chairman's, excuse me. In the statute, it's laid out that as determined by the governor upon that refusal failure. So we haven't been made aware of that determination.
Okay, and thank you. I thought that was the trigger mechanism anyways through the governor. Any other questions? Go ahead, Co-Chairman Hyde.
Would it help if the committee agrees to send a letter to the governor to send the bill to the federal government from our committee? That's kind of our purview here. And what would you comment on that? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we're standing by to send the bill.
Any other questions? Representative Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. Have any of these bills been generated by other states that you're aware of, similar to this? And how do you think they would be received?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Erickson, not to my knowledge, and I don't have any idea.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking with this one, we might pick up some counsel on public comment.
Okay. Should we let him off the hook for now?
Just one more question.
Oh, I knew we couldn't let you off that easy. Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, back to this. This is kind of a good topic that I haven't heard anybody discuss in the legislature. It's, it's kind of a nominal amount, but it does send a message that, these AMLs are hurting us here in the state. And I guess, has it ever been requested from the state land office for the governor to, here's our number, and has that been rejected, or has it just never been requested, or who specifically should be making that request?
Mr. Chairman, it has not been requested up to this point. I think a couple of years ago in 2024, it was this topic was revisited by the Joint Ag Committee. And so they had the discussion at that point in time where we presented essentially the same information as today.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ben, where would these funds, if this bill was initiated and went forward, where would those funds from this bill end up categorized at,
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, it is in the statute that they would go to the permanent land fund for those specific lands. So every piece of state trust land benefits a specific permanent land fund, and that's where those would go.
Thank you, Ben. And what was your last name again?
Bump.
Bump?
B-U-M-P.
That's easy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. The next, I guess, group that we're going to ask, the Wyoming State Forestry Division. Is anybody here? Oh, there he is. Well, yeah, I thought we'd wait and do it at the end after all the presentation. Welcome. I was looking for Miss Norris, but you're a good substitute.
Not quite as good looking.
Go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Matt Marshall. I'm the Assistant State Forester for Operations with Wyoming State Forestry Division. Ms. Norris sends her regrets, but she is online and will be available to help answer questions if there's anything that comes up here. So just before we dive into today's discussion topic, I wanted to thank this committee for your work during the 2026 legislative session. I think Senate File 17 Good Neighbor Authority amendments have gone a long way already in expanding our flexibility and what we can do with the program within Wyoming State Forestry. They've really just expanded all the different things that we can do with our positions and the available resources that we have on the landscape, and we're starting to see some outcomes from that already. The federal government is depending on us, specifically the U.S. Forest Service, to do quite a bit of work this year, and very proud of what that program has done. So thank you all. With that, we have the associated rules out for the Good Neighbor Authority account. Those are out for public comment, should be closed pretty shortly here the next week, and we're hopeful to have rules finalized in the coming months. So more updates on that to come. So to move forward for the committee's request today, we have reviewed the current Good Neighbor Authority framework and evaluated whether it could be used to support wild horse management on Bureau of Land Management lands. Our review included the federal Good Neighbor Authority statutes, the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burros Act, Wyoming's Good Neighbor Authority statutes, current BLM implementation guidance, and discussions with the Council of Western State Foresters, as well as several Western states that are currently administering Good Neighbor Authority programs. Based on that review, we believe that the current Good Neighbor Authority framework is structured primarily as a land and vegetative restoration authority rather than population management authority. Since the creation in 2014 Farm Bill, the Good Neighbor Authority has become one of the most successful partnership tools available for increasing pace and scale of active management on federal lands. In Wyoming, we've used Good Neighbor Authority to implement timber sales, hazardous fuels reduction, forest health treatments, watershed restoration, invasive species control, and wildlife habitat improvement. While these projects may vary considerably, they all share a common purpose, which is that they directly manage the vegetation on the landscape. When it comes to wild horse management, the Wild Free Roaming Horses and Burro Act establishes a different type of federal responsibility. Congress assigned the Secretary of the Interior, acting through the BLM, responsibility for administering the Wild Horse and Burro program. These responsibilities include establishing appropriate management levels, monitoring herd populations, and determining when excess animals exist, and implementing long-term population management. The distinction we identified is that Good Neighbor Authority was created to implement forest management and restoration projects, while the Wild Horse and Burro Act establishes an ongoing federal population management program. Current Good Neighbor Authority guidance identifies eligible work as authorized restoration services and recreational enhancement and improvement services. Authorized restoration services include activities such as forest, rangeland, and watershed restoration, hazardous fuels reduction, insect and disease treatments, and projects that improve fish and wildlife habitat. We did not identify wild horse management activities such as gathers, fertility controls, or herds management as expressly identified Good Neighbor Authority project categories. As mentioned earlier, as part of the review, we did contact the Council of Western State Foresters, as well as many of the surrounding Western states that were actively administering Good Neighbor programs. Through those communications, we weren't able to identify anywhere where GNA is being used to implement anything with wild horse population management or just wildlife population management in general. The Council of Western State Foresters did share a similar observation and noted that the purpose of the Good Neighbor Authority is explicitly stated to address watershed health, veg management, wildlife habitat, but that the current statutory framework does not clearly authorize wildlife population management or anything specific to wild horses. Our review also found that Congress has consistently expanded GNA through targeted legislation. Most recently, the Explore Act broadened GNA by expressly authorizing new recreation-related projects, expanding where those projects may occur, and require corresponding updates with the implementation guidance. Did provide a handout to the committee that just summarizes that a little bit, and happy to answer questions on that. If the committee believes that there's value in expanding the state's role in wild horse management, we recommend working with the congressional delegation, as you've just discussed, the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service to evaluate whether additional federal statutory authority and corresponding national guidance are appropriate. Following that approach would establish a clear federal framework identifying eligible activities, defining the respective responsibilities of the BLM and participating states, and provide consistent implementation guidance nationwide. Once that framework is established, Wyoming can evaluate whether any corresponding changes to state law or agency responsibilities would be appropriate. In closing, Wyoming State Forestry believes that GNA has been an exceptionally successful partnership that has significantly increased pace and scale of active management across Wyoming's federal lands. If Congress determines states should play a larger role, we believe the most effective path forward is to build upon the successful framework already established for GNA through clear statutory direction, national implementation guidance. With that, I thank you and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Assistant Director. Any questions? Go ahead, Co-Chairman Iden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Assistant Director. That was a good report. Thanks for the kudos for the committee. How prevalent is wild horse population in Forest Service lands versus BLM? Do you have any idea about that? I haven't heard much about how the two dovetail together. I know it's primarily BLM land on the flatlands with water, if there is any. And do you have any comment on how that affects Forest Service lands?
Mr. Chairman, right now I do not have any additional comment for U.S. Forest Service lands.
No other questions? Thank you. And once again, thank you for the pat on the back. I mean, I can tell you, we're excited to see the success of the Good Neighbor Authority, and we're pleased to see how the State Forestry Department, how you guys have kind of rolled with this and helped us expand that. I think it's been, I think it's a great program, and I'm happy that we could help, and let's keep pushing that ball. I'd like to see us doing it for the whole state. So I'm excited for the future, but thanks for your time. The next up is Wyoming Department of Corrections. And please introduce yourselves, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tim Rysel, and I serve as the Deputy Administrator for Prison Operations for the Wyoming Department of Corrections. Director Shannon wishes he could be here and sends his regards. He had some other matters to attend to. So, to my left, we have Warden Curtis Moffitt of the Wyoming Honor Farm. Warden Moffitt oversees the day-to-day operations of our facility in Riverton and will be providing the committee with more specific details shortly after this, as well as the tour at 2:30. Thank you for providing our agency an opportunity to testify before you today regarding our programming. On behalf of the department, I want to outline the overall value and foundational impact of the Wild Horse program. Since the inception in 1988, this long-standing partnership has served as a cornerstone of our rehabilitative efforts, offering a unique training approach that benefits both the wild horses, the inmate trainers, and the staff. The true value of the program extends far beyond basic vocational training. Working with these animals requires a disciplined development process that instills a strong work ethic, personal accountability, and vital communication skills. Because horses naturally respond to trust and respect, they provide immediate, honest feedback to our inmates. Inmates quickly learn that to succeed, they must treat both the horses and their fellow crew members with dignity. These essential life lessons are directly transferable to the outside world. drastically improving individuals' transitions back into society and helping them become more productive citizens upon release. At the same time, this program allows us to work hand in hand with federal partners to manage wild horse populations on Wyoming ranges, providing the public with high-quality, gentled animals through our structured training and their adoption events. It remains a highly effective model of public service and meaningful inmate rehabilitation, of which we are very proud of. And I want to thank Director Kirby and Mr. Purdy for their comments on us. We agree, this is a very good program. Again, we thank you and the committee for allowing us time to present today, and for your continued support of our department's mission. With your permission, I'll turn the floor over to Warden Moffett.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I don't know if there's a whole lot for me to expand on that other than taking questions, but as Mr. Ricel mentioned, we've had a great partnership with the BLM since 1988. Generally 2 adoptions per year. It was paused a little bit during COVID where we had some online adoptions. Roughly about 50 animals in more recent times get adopted at each one of those adoptions in May and September. Like the numbers say, I think you got the handout, 5,000 horses have been through the program since 1988. Roughly 2,000 inmates have been employed in that program since 1988. You know, and we recognize, you've heard the numbers from that have been testified so far of the wild horse population in Wyoming, and we kind of represent a drop in the bucket of that. However, we value the program for the quality of horses we turn out, but also value our mission statement of returning our inmates back to society as responsible members. And I think that goes a long way to that program goes a long way to that return. And it's really been a great partnership, and we look forward to continuing it as we go forward. And I would certainly be open to any questions now.
Okay, any questions? Co-Chairman Ide?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here today. It's good to get educated on what goes on there. Help me out a little bit just on the inmates. Is it voluntary that they engage in this program, and is it both men and women, or just a little description of kind of how the program works there? Thank you.
The Wyoming, Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, we are a 304-bed all-male facility. Generally always full with minimum custody inmates, which means that they are at least within 8 years of a discharge date. So most of them, our average length of stay is approximately 9 months, but some stay longer. Obviously, others hit us and they're ready to be released. You know, as far as it goes, those inmates, they're assigned to the ag program. So ag consists of a lot of things, raising the crops. We sit on a full section of land. Not all of that is farmable. We irrigate, we grow the crops. We're all self-sustaining as far as that goes. We don't buy any feed right now. So they're assigned to ag, but they volunteer to work with the horses. And so the horse program is voluntary. They're still working in the ag program itself, but they volunteer to work with those horses. And I think, was there something else that I didn't hit on?
Follow up.
Mr. Chairman, if you would just back up a little bit. So typically they're only, if I understood you right, they're only at the honor farm approximately 9 months, but they were on like an 8-year. Give me a little more of detail on that, just so I didn't quite pick all of that out.
The average length of stay of 9 months is more. We may get some inmates that have a short length of sentence. Once they come to us, they may be on their way out within a month or two. However, we may get some. I think one of the guys working with our ag group right now has been there 4 years and probably still has another year or two left to go. But they have to be within 8 years. Now, some of the other ones that get out earlier bring that number down to the 9-month mark. But we have several there that are a couple years, 3 years with that.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you say they get out, are they finished and they're going back into society? Is that what you mean by that? Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of 3 things typically. They either discharge their sentence, which means it's completely done. They're no longer under supervision. They may parole. which means obviously they're under supervision of the parole and go out to the public with that, or they go to an adult community correction center. Those are basically the three things that happen with us. Our parole success rates are pretty good as far as that goes, because most of the time the parole board recognizes if an inmate can do some good time at the farm, that he is probably going to be a little self-sufficient and be well under supervision as well.
Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The horses that you take in as candidates for this training, what's the process, screening process involved in that?
You know, Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, I think the BLM could probably speak to that a little bit more. Generally, we get about 3-year-old horses, and they come in extremely wild, a lot of them, and then we start from ground zero with them and work them up through. And most of the horses you will see get adopted have probably been with us a year and a half going forward, because we have roughly 175 horses is our target range right now. And we adopt about 45, 50 of those every adoption. So then we get others to replace those. But and I don't know if that really answers your question as far as the screening process, but we get them from the holding facilities after they gather them a lot of times. So
follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you basically have no input on what horses you receive, if I'm hearing you correctly, that they're screened basically at the BLM level as to whether they're may be a good candidate or not.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, yeah, we basically, BLM brings them to us and we take care of them from there.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think it would behoove you to have input into that screening process?
Representative Davis, you know, we've been pretty successful. They talk about it's very rare that we have, I think after 3 times of not getting adopted, they're called hero horses and they return. It's extremely rare for us not to get a horse adopted. So we've worked with all kinds of them. Occasionally we will work with the BLM to return one, but it's rare.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, just for the record, our success rate with the adoption is roughly 98%. So what we're doing is working pretty well.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned self-sufficiency on the horse population effectively in the ag program. Do you guys raise your own hay? That's a lot of horses to feed. Can you explain that a little bit? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, yeah, we sit on 640 acres, probably roughly, if I had to guess, about 450 of those acres are actually farmable irrigated ground. We raise anything from alfalfa to oats. We'll have some corn. Unfortunately, this year we're probably going to run out of water like everybody else. And we also got hit with that hailstorm a couple of weeks ago, and our crops are trying to make a comeback, but we hope we get them to return a little bit. But yeah, we don't buy hay. We also have a cattle. We have raised some cattle. We got over behind the Life Resource Center right now here in Lander. And the cattle we may have to sell. Our main priority is the horses, making sure we have enough feed for them. So our cattle crop will go up or down depending on what kind of hay we have. So, and the inmates all work on that. They do the irrigating. We do all small square bales because we have the labor to do that. Again, teaches some good work ethic. They get a little bonus pay for picking up hay, and it works for us.
Representative Erickson. Sorry.
Thank you for that. I know the small bale drill, so it's the best teacher in life right there for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you kind of hit the sweet spot with the demand for your horses? I mean, 98% is a great success rate. Do you ever see areas that you could expand that and provide more horses available, or are you kind of right in that comfort area?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Erickson, we kind of had some discussion a few years ago in front of a committee about expanding the program a little bit. Basically, our infrastructure right now, when we're talking about holding pens, when we're talking about crops and availability to feed them, is we could probably go up to 200, but that's probably our ceiling with that. And it's also a matter of staffing too. And I think our belief is that if we expand horses, we would probably have to have more staff to assist with the training of the horses, because our product and our would probably lessen the effectiveness of our product. But target range, like I said, is 175. We can go up, and I think we're at 179 right now. So we can go somewhere between that 175 to 200 with what we have. I mean, this year might be a little tough, just like everybody else, but that's kind of where we stand right now.
Go ahead, Co-Chairman Iden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could ask questions on this all day. I'm curious. I grew up, bucking a lot of hay and breaking horses. Who trains the guys to train the horses? Do you have people on staff? You bring cowboys in to kind of school them on horsemanship, that kind of thing? I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Senator Ide, our current horse supervisor, we have a staff designated just that supervises the horse training. So he supervises those approximately 30 inmates. Our ag manager, which is Mr. Travis Shootman, does a great job with that. He actually taught some classes at LCCC in Cheyenne several years ago. He is a very skilled horseman as well. So they do the training and gentling techniques that have been established that they've taken from other resources. And then occasionally we'll have somebody come in from the outside too, that's maybe considered a master trainer in the United States from somewhere, and come in and give us, both the staff and the inmates some further techniques they can use with that.
Good. I had a question for you. With the success of the program, have you had other states that have talked to you or inquired about, the successfulness of this program? Have they expressed any interest in maybe trying to replicate what you're doing in other states?
Mr. Chairman, we haven't had any other states reach out to us. A few years ago when 60 Minutes did that segment on us, we had some other departments reach out, and I think that's always a question, why don't other states do this? And I can't speculate on that. We're kind of a smaller agency. It works for us. I think being a rural community, overall with the state, it develops some skills that transfer into successful employment, outside of prison, and it really helps with getting our inmates employed once they're released with that. But there is some specifics with Wyoming that probably make it a little bit more successful. There are several other programs, or there were throughout the country, that did some of this. Canyon City in Colorado had one. I think Arizona, Nevada did at one time. Nevada still does, I believe. And that's kind of where it stands right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. And go ahead.
Just one final comment. Again, thank you very much. And I know you're a little bit ahead of schedule, Mr. Chairman. So if you guys, whatever the committee's pleasure is, if you wanted to come earlier, just let us know. We're completely amenable to adjusting that tour time to the committee's pleasure.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, do you need us to stick around present time?
It wouldn't be a bad idea to stick around just for a little bit, just in case some questions come up that you might be able to help answer. Thank you. And the next on the list would be the Northern Arapaho Business Council. We got members of the Northern Arapaho. Thank you. Okay. What we got? Yeah. Welcome, you guys. Yeah, to make sure, introduce yourselves, if you would, to the committee.
Chairman Keenan Grosbeck, Northern Arapaho Business Council, for the record.
Co-Chairwoman Kim Whiteman Harjo. Another Rapo Business Council for the record.
Arthur Lawson, Director of Shoshone Rapo Tribal Fishing Game.
Welcome, you guys. I'm not sure what, do you have any interest, or do you have any programs that you're currently implementing on the reservation dealing with the wild horses?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have any program up and running right now. We're just trying to monitor the amount of feral horses we have. We're tackling the issues that we did have because of the number of horses roaming the reservation. Right now, we're spending most of our time on cheatgrass studies in the higher elevation and a lot of the mule deer, bighorn sheep, and sage grouse habitat areas.
Good. Go ahead.
Chairman, we did have a horse problem. It was up to 9,000 on the reservation, feral horses. And it was eating us out of house and home. And since, with the help of Art and some funding from the state of Wyoming and the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, was able to take care of that problem. We're down to, what was like 9,000, we're down to like 1,500 now, feral horses. But we've passed resolutions and policies for our range management that we don't want no more horses out there on the range at all anymore. Because ranchers, horses get out. It's just a big problem that we don't want to deal with right now. And since then, we've seen the comeback of mule deer back in historic ranges and sage grouse. So it's been a real success, but it was a lot of work, you know, and Art could tell you all about that.
Well, and that is true. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yep. Another thing I like to mention is what you had talked about earlier about people dropping their horses off. That was contributed a whole lot to our problem that we had on the reservation.
Yep.
Not only do we see that with those animals, but there's a lot of other animals that have been dropped off on the reservation. So, but we'll have another discussion about that another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Chairman, you know, it was back in the 2000s, early 2000s. There was a drought, and I'm going to reiterate what the co-chair said. My dad said, let's go out here, north of Pavilion. And so for what? He said, let's go. We went out there. Prices of hay was up. Gas prices were up. He said, I want to find out how many saddle horses we have out here. Took a coffee can, filled it up with dirt, shook it. Should have seen all the saddle horses that come running, you know. It's because people couldn't pay for their horses, you know, and they just dropped them off out there. So then we have a problem to getting a brand inspector out there to take care of these, you know. It's an ongoing problem, and I see that, you know, pushing the numbers from what's going on right now, current situation that we're in now. I think the numbers are going to rise up like quite a bit. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you guys coming out to the committee. Senator Doxter, you have a
Quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman, and while we've got you, and my colleague over in Carbon County mentioned that the horses are pushing the wildlife. Are you seeing that as well? And we got your wildlife representative here. Are we seeing that as a problem? Are we challenging our wildlife at your location?
Now, Mr. Chairman, we did see that problem in the beginning when we started doing our roundups. We were seeing a lot of our wildlife not coming back to the reservation on the wintering grounds. The reservation is really unique on the wintering ranges that we have and that we can offer for wildlife, for mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep, and everything else, because we share the wildlife with the state of Wyoming. And so we were noticing the bigger populations and the bigger wintering grounds that our wildlife wasn't coming back. After the removal, the last big removal, it was overnight results. A lot of our wildlife came back overnight, and our fawn and calf were starting to double in population as we've seen them throughout the last couple of years.
When was it that the bulk of the horses were removed? How long ago was that?
End of 2022 and 23, beginning of 2023.
Okay. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that the people are dropping the horses off on the tribal lands there. Were you able to work with the Wyoming brand inspector to identify, say, the sources of that? You know, were they branded or, you know, many horses? Well, and the other question is, was there some BLM brands on there? I guess is my other question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis. There was several different brands from different states that we located. We worked side by side with the state livestock board, the state vet, and the brand inspectors for the state. A lot of the horses that we identified that belonged to individuals were either weren't alive or weren't around anymore, moved out of the state. A lot of them, there was maybe a couple of BLM brands, but other than that, there were a lot of the brands were from the feral horses coming in and knocking down fences and getting to people's good horses at their own property.
Go ahead, Co-Chairman Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I couldn't hear the names very good, so I apologize for not calling you by name. But just to back up again, everybody's kind of hitting on it. You said 22, 23 was when you removed most of them, and you were at around 9,000 at that time, and you're down to 1,500, and you want to get to zero, essentially. Did I hear that right? That's the first part, shaking your head. I think that I heard that right. So the continual, my thoughts go to, you know, people dropping off their horses, just they can't afford them, they can't feed them. I think that's maybe the problem, and that probably will never end. Do you think it would help that situation if slaughter was legal? That's my question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that we should do that throughout the state, but I think we should ask our people how they feel and what their perspective is on slaughtering those animals and even consuming those animals. I think our public would most answer that the best for us.
Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of the, 7,500 animals that you gathered, where did they go?
Majority of our horses we gave to Mexico. The tribes ended up paying for a lot of the diesel fuel, the brand inspections, the certified hay, the vet bills, a lot of overtime for my employees. It was just a big bill that the tribes didn't profit any money off of it. The money we did made, we ended up putting back into paying for everything to get them removed off the reservation.
Was there any effort made to get compensation from the government for the removal of those horses?
We did receive about 1.2 million from the Bureau of Indian Affairs to do the removals. For the tribes and for the tribal fishing game, it was important to protect our natural resources what we have left. And so that was the bigger picture than just making money off the deal.
Yeah, I know that's the biggest thing, is just dealing with the problem. That we all want that to go away. But it sounds like to me that it's your belief that if we were able to get the euthanasia back into the law as it was initially drafted, that would benefit your tribe as well.
Yes, it would, but you got to take it by case, you know. We don't want to be putting down, you know, a perfectly good horse that could go to the Arnold farm, you know what I mean? So,
well,
or children, you know.
And that's one of the things. Have you thought about maybe trying to implement something like the honor farm on the tribal grounds? Because I would think that's kind of, I know talking with Representative Posey, I know, you know, I got excited talking to him about the heritage. I mean, I think that would be a really neat opportunity to get that heritage going and getting some of that going. So your comments.
And I agree with you. I think that what you said about consumption, for us, it would be our heritage. That's why I said I believe that we need to ask our people how they would feel about it. I don't want to make that decision for them. I'm here to represent what they want to do. Right now, we do have a therapeutic course program at our Wind River Cares. And it's really helped a lot of our young people, our mental health people, substance abuse, anything, you name it. Our horses are healers, no matter how you look at it.
They are, and
mhm.
I've seen that with the Honor Farm. I mean, it changes life.
It does.
Really does.
And
So-
even myself as a child, I grew up with horses. My mother loved horses. She was one of the first jockeys around here in Fremont County. But and that's how I feel about it. It's real therapeutic. And I think that we're walking a fine line when we talk about consumption, just because in America, it's not, no, I wouldn't say normal. There's different normals for different people, but it's something that we do not practice is eating horses. And for us, Native Americans, horses are a big part of how we lived. They're a big part of how we hunted our food.
Yep.
Big part of our distance. And even now, when we talk about the use of a horse, with the prices being now what they are, I see a lot more people horse plowing as they did in the old days. I think a lot more people are starting to go back to how we used to live in the old days. For us, it's real powerful to live that way instead of having electricity, instead of having running water. But yet we have instances where those things have to be there for the person that needs them, especially if they're handicapped. So thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, and thank you. And I guess that's one thing that I wanted to do is make sure that that our committee is communicating with you guys if there's anything we can do to help implement something like that, help you. I'm sure the people at the Honor Farm, we got a pretty good track record there, but if there's ways that we could partner, that's what I'm interested in. Is I like the Good Neighbor Authority. I like the concept. I think we need to come up with something similar to that with the horses, and then perhaps we can develop that program with your tribal nation, and with our congressional delegation, maybe we can get something like that going.
One of the things that we are working on is our own sales barn, our own brand inspector, own vet. So that's another part that we're working on right now. So there'll probably be some MOUs and things like that coming forward, maybe with Fremont County and their brand inspectors and those kinds of things.
Well, good. Got a question, Co-Chairman Ide?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For anybody up there who wants to answer this, I guess I don't understand fully the sovereign nation, jurisdiction part of, the Indian tribes versus U.S. laws. In your opinion, would it be legal for you guys to have a slaughter facility on the reservation? Anybody comment on that?
I'll comment on that, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair. Yeah, it's a legal possibility that we could have it, but the infrastructure and the funding and the roadblocks, the same that BLM has, would be a big issue. And even just entertaining that idea, that's one thing we have talked about, but not very much, because we know there's a lot of issues surrounding those slaughterhouses.
Follow up?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that answer too. I just looking at it practically, your trucking costs to go to Mexico, and you're not the only ones I know that truck horses to Mexico, and there is probably a market for that. There was. I used to have to do it when I was younger before the law went into place, and it almost seems like it's more inhumane letting these horses starve and not getting taken care of because you can't do anything with them as far as slaughtering them or euthanasia, whatever. But yeah, thank you for your comments today.
Thank you. We want to keep soldiering on, or we got to take a break? Go ahead, Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You guys are dealing with this issue. What is the what's your vision for it? You know, we have this issue with the BLM and you guys have the same issue. What do you see as a process forward?
Go ahead.
Chairman, Representative, from the removal of over 9,000 feral horses on the Wind River Reservation, we believe we saved our reservation for the next 100 years. We're not really looking on the big, huge management problems and issues with the horses. Our biggest issues right now is cheatgrass, fires, other invasive species. So we're spending a majority of our time through the tribal fishing game to chronic wasting disease and e-mobi for wild sheep. And so that's it's really not a problem for us anymore. So we're focusing on the damage that the horses did and the other issues that we have in front of us now.
But I'd like to add that maybe one thing that we might look at is maybe some kind of policing of where they're dropped off at, maybe the most popular place that they're dropped off at. A lot of times it's over at Arapahoe Ranch or near Arapahoe Ranch. So there are certain places that people drop these horses off. And I think that if we had some people there, maybe, I don't know, 24-hour surveillance or some cameras, something like that, I think policing on where they're dropping horses off, because not only will it happen here, it'll happen in the rest of Wyoming where there isn't anybody around. That's where they usually go, just to drop off a horse so no one don't see them. But yet, is that horse going to have water? Is it going to have a place to eat? Is it going to be able to live? Those are the kinds of things I think that we need to look out for too.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was kind of to my point is, you know, horses naturally reproduce. So, I mean, you got 3, you got, you know, in a couple of years, 5. So it has to be part of an ongoing management program for the nation, not only the BLM, but because it's something that we have to continue to address simply because they're going to come in through the cloak of darkness and be dropped off there. And are you neutering this? Are we sending out geldings? Are you doing anything like that, I guess is my question.
Well, right now, we're still just keeping a population count. We have one game warden who's pretty much our livestock officer, monitoring the population of the horses and seeing if there's more numbers being in certain areas. The reservation is pretty big in size, so to keep an eye on everything is kind of difficult. But we still have budgeting for our aerial flights and stuff like that. And if it does get into a problem, we'll do little manageable roundups instead of the big roundups that we had to do to control the population. But we've noticed on the reservation that we do believe that even on BLM, that population every 4 years doubles in the horse population. So we noticed that we had to do the bigger roundups because if we did the smaller ones, we were just not keeping up with the colt crop of that spring or all year. You know, horses don't have a migration, or they don't have the same season as wildlife. They reproduce horses all year round, so they just don't stop.
So not only do we have a horse problem, we have a dog problem. We have a cat problem, you know, anything we have a trash problem. So anything that people can drop off without being monitored, that is what is happening.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
We do also, are able to put in for supplemental funding. So if we're able to, if the population starts spiking out of control, we're able to put in for that funding and do a bigger roundup. You know, I think we just need to do one more big roundup and get rid of the rest of them, so that we get it all the way down, and then we could just keep on them, keep the numbers down. You know.
But we would be willing to work with BLM or the Forest Service or whoever we need to on that good neighbor authority. We've been looking at that too. So anything that we can do to help the state of Wyoming, that's what we'd like to do also.
Thank you. No other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
We do have another member here. He's a member of the Shoshone tribe, and he was actually involved in in the roundups.
Yeah, and they're the next one on the
Mhm.
list. I was gonna call them up to the table, so. And you guys might stick around just in case, okay? So the Eastern Shoshone Business Council. There's room for three of you.
My name's Preston Washke. I'm Eastern Shoshone. I don't know if the council's here or not, but I did a lot of horse running. And, to me, it's fun, and a lot of these horses that we did get and whatnot, yeah, we send them to Mexico and stuff, but some of them, a lot of them, we rode and used them and stuff. And, they're good horses. And we did have a problem with horses, but, my view on it is you don't have to get rid of all of them. Manage them. And if that means getting so many in every year and doing what you got to do with them and stuff, ride them, do whatever, but, they need to be managed. And it's about all I got to say.
Well, and that's, my background, I'm a wildlife biologist, and I can tell you that that's what I understand is that Mother Nature does not manage things as well as we can. And sometimes we get things out of balance because of how we manage, but there's no doubt that it's a resource that we need to watch. I think it has a lot of value, but it can be very detrimental when it gets out of balance. And that's kind of what we're seeing is maybe it's not unique to Wyoming. We're being told that all the states are over objective. And the question I have, and this is me just not knowing, I know that the reservation has two different tribes on it. Is the reservation like bifurcated? Is it all just one? It's not like north and south that you guys all share it?
No, we all share, and I'd like to also say that, it's all, you see a lot of this stuff, like U.S. Fish and Wildlife, whatnot, they'll take pictures of things, saying these horses did this. But if you're out there a lot and stuff, you'll find that them horses are traveling long distances for water. They're grazing in areas that cows don't graze, and it's been, my experience that cows, when they get on a water source, they camp on it and they graze everything off. It makes your horses look bad then.
Yeah. Yeah, they all can do that. I've actually seen where elk do the same thing if they're allowed to concentrate in too high in numbers. I've seen river systems just totally denuded because of elk overgrazing. But yeah, any questions? Go ahead, Co-Chairman Hyde.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've got a quick question on, you made the comment on they're good horses, and I've kind of had this in my mind through all of this discussion. I don't know how, you hear a lot that, the wild horses are inbred and they're not quality, AQHA, quarter horse quality performance horse if you're a team roper or a calf roper or whatever, a barrel racer. Can you kind of explain a little bit about what a good horse means in the wild horse realm? Thank you.
Well, a good horse, you should be able to do anything on him. You have to go out, rope a cow, rope a bull. That's what a good horse is. A good horse, you can take him to a team roping. There's not many horses that can't outrun a cow. It's all about the hand riding it. So, if you need a quarter horse to outrun a cow, wild horse do the same. It might do it better.
Thank you. I was just looking for, yeah, a little bit of the genetics on that and if they're as good a horse as you would expect otherwise. Yeah.
You know, and when we were running horses, you know, you might get a bunch in that draft crosses, you know, big, heavy horses, be perfect bucking horses. You know, a guy's just got to take the time to play with them. You know, we'd get another bunch in, perfect quarter horses. You know, we had a wide variety of horses. And, you know, they're there. You know, we even had the inbred things too. But we managed to get them, you know, kind of out of the way. You know, it might be a thought that maybe put good studs on them. You know, quarter studs, thoroughbred studs, maybe a little bit of draft. You know, you talk about a slaughter plant, you know, you're looking at weight there, you know.
Yep, and so I think that just hearing from him with his boots on the ground and seeing the horses that he's seen, you could tell which ones were dropped off, those kinds of things. So I think that when we start talking about this management plan, and we will in the future, I think that people with boots on the ground need be a big part of that. So that way we can get their expertise on what we need to know as being the decision makers in those areas. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very interested in where exactly you found success in your roundup, and did you get a lot of blowback? You know, gathering up that many horses and putting them on a truck, and I'm, you know, looking for future resolutions to this problem. Should we continue going down that road?
You know, like what I was doing and stuff was, you know, it's basically what Art and them guys is doing, you know, it's tribal member coming off the res. You know, I had my buyers and whatnot and stuff. And, you know, my deal is, you know, move them as fast as I could because I didn't want to see them starving, you know, and I didn't have the money. You know, I had to do this by the pound, you know, so my buyer told me, you know, I don't want to see nothing under 700 pounds. So when I was doing it, I had to sort horses just to pay my hands and stuff, and to make it, you know, try to make a little money.
Yeah.
You know, at the time I was unemployed, so, you know, you got to make a job where you can. And it helped out the res and everything too.
Yeah, I can see how it would. Are there any other questions? Thank you. And I know that the governor's office is next up, but I saw Representative Posey walk in. Bavia. Welcome. Is there anybody from the governor's office? Anybody from the governor's office? Not seeing anyone. No. Oh.
Oh, the joy of my life. Thank you so much, Representative Ward.
Yeah, that's
Members of the.
That's Chairman Wharf. That's
That
what
was just
my
about to-
co-chairman reminded
I
me of
was
that.
just about to correct that. Chairman Wharf and Co-Chairman Ide. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. Excuse me. My name is Randall Luthi. I'm the Governor's Policy Director. And also here from our office are our tribal liaisons, Anita Roman and James Sorrells. I told them that I would save them this particular topic because this has been the wild horse issue has been handled somewhat a little separately since it is broader than just the tribes. But I'm very much appreciate that they're here as well. First of all, thank you for this issue. It's absolutely a vital issue. I know we talked a little bit about, are we in dire straits? If we aren't, we're not far from it. Art Lawson indicated, that some of the population indications are that a relatively large size herd can double in population every 4 years. So, I mean, if you have 3 horses, that isn't so bad. But if you're dealing with 4,000, pick a number, 4,699, you're talking pretty soon, that's a lot of horses in 4 years. And they do reproduce very well. But they also affect a lot of things. Mr. Chairman, you have already identified many of those. They affect grazing. They affect wildlife. They affect sage grouse. They affect, relationships with cattle as well as we have with our private grazers. And in many ways, horses, as you well know, are somewhat of an iconic species. They do hold a special vision for those of us that have been raised in the West. We like seeing horses. We may not like to see 1,000 horses, but we do like seeing horses. But what I have found is in many cases, they're very much like bears, wolves. They're very popular in states where they're not found in. And that's what makes it such a difficult issue to deal with. Once Congress decided that wild horse and burros needed to be federally basically controlled, then that did bring in, that brought in 35, 38 other states that may not have the same issues that we do in the West. Yet many of them have far political power than we do in the West, and certainly have more people. So suddenly we see ourselves with a local issue being dealt nationally, which we have found normally doesn't work out all that well. I really appreciate it. In fact, Chairman Ide, you asked about the genetics. I'm pleased to tell you that my first horse was a daughter of a desert horse. And she could outrun a cow. She could also buck me off once in a while, but that was just part of growing up at that time. I greatly appreciated the tribal interests as they've talked about the success that they have had in those roundups. And I believe that does come down to a key that we can all take home. It's got to be large roundups. It's a large problem. It's got to be large roundups. But when you start talking about large roundups, you once again get into the politics, the national politics of what should be a more localized effort. So it takes time, it takes effort, and above all, it takes Congress. We've talked about that all morning long. We've talked about how Congress needs to put substantially, and I do mean substantially, more money into that program to make it work. The state has had a couple of funds over the years, thanks to the legislature. The contract we talked that you heard the tribal members talk about, that was partially funded by the state, and it worked. And and I'll talk about a little more of that funding in just a minute. But then again, the state, particularly the state of Wyoming, cannot handle that full bill. It has got to be Congress decided to take over the management. I think they should start, realizing they also have to pay for it, or give it back to the states. I think that's really our choices that we have. I know you're going to have some hard questions for me here, but I thought I'd just touch on base maybe on the very funding that you wanted to talk about. And that was Section 303. I'll start there with this year's budget bill. And it actually set up a fund. It actually allowed $700,000 to be carried over for the management of wild horses. Now, part of that original fund, and I believe it may have been back in 2022 or 2024, that was part of the funding that was used on that successful contract with the tribes. So the $700,000 was carried over. When the governor saw that, he saw an opportunity for a couple of things there. And one is he did a line item veto that it took out just the Wind River Indian Reservation. So it would allow that money to be used in other contracts to help with the management of wild horses anywhere else in the state. However, the governor also honored the legislative direction that if we were going to do another contract on the Wind River Reservation, that it would be a matching fund, a dollar per dollar match. So that's where we are at the moment with this Section 303. We are very interested in what else that money can be used for, but I do have a couple of recommendations for you all as you go forward. We were thinking possibly having an agreement with grazing associations, other, maybe states, local counties, and again, what is dealing with management of wild horses? We heard a little bit of discussion, the difference between wild horses and feral horses. So both are the same, both can be the same issue. Both can be the same problem. So my first suggestion is you might want to look at this budget language again and maybe include feral horses as well, which I believe will allow the governor's office to actually increase the possibilities of doing agreements, particularly with grazing associations. We've talked already a little bit about this year's drought. Usually tough times result in more feral horses. And I don't want to cast any judgment on that. Everyone has their reasons for dropping horses off. The reality is that ownership is often very difficult to trace. There may be multiple brands. If you do find an owner, there's a reason they gave that horse up. They're probably not going to be able to take them back. They're probably not going to be able to pay any damages. They're probably not going to be able to pay any fines. So that would be one of the first suggestions I have as you look at that language as well. Again, the legislature, for a reason, made that a match. But I would suggest to you that possibly either you do away with that matching requirement, or for the Wind River Reservation, that you make it clear that you could have an in-kind. Because right now it talks about a dollar for dollar, and that's kind of hard to interpret anything other than a cash match, but you might want to clarify that. You just heard the tribal representatives talk about the costs that they put into managing those horses on the reservation. So that might be a possibility as well. The other area I will touch on, which I was kind of squeamish back there, or just maybe I was squirming a bit, and that dealt with that 2024 law about as determined by the governor. I was sure you might want to ask about that, right? Or whether or not to send a bill to the federal government. Rather than tell you, I do not know of a good reason why we have not made that determination, I will take Chairman Ide up on his offer. We would welcome a letter from this committee giving us some direction there. But the reality is this. We've already heard from the BLM. They don't have enough money to do the roundups. And, yet we're going to send them a bill for $23,000, maybe $40,000. That's been some of our hesitation, because frankly, we have administration right now that we are really working well with. And that, we have not, and the reality is, you send a bill to the federal government, chances are you're never going to hear back. I mean, just to be perfectly frank. But we would much rather continue to work on those positive relationships that we have with the current state and federal BLM. But we would welcome that as well. And at least we have a figure now of what that might be. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready to take a break. Is that correct?
I don't know. They may have some questions for you. You're not going to get off that easy.
Well, you can't blame me for trying, can you?
Good try.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
I
you.
will stand ready for questions, and hopefully I will be able to answer them as well.
And no fiery darts, but any questions for Mr. Luthi?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dockstader.
You're right, and you're correct in your summary, Mr. Luthi. We need to move this back into the at the federal level, but for us to put a bill out to the BLM now is not the answer. What about the concept I spoke of earlier? If we just sit down with our field reps here first and decide what we need to do, take it to our DC delegation and see if we want to take it any further. I don't see it as being our state problem now. Any other thoughts from you, sir?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dockstader, I think absolutely that's where we need to start. One of the things we talked a little bit about is that prohibition on euthanasia. And if I understood the BLM correctly, that is actually a rider which has been put on appropriation bills for years. So what we really need is just to let that rider expire. It doesn't take legislation. It actually takes the lack of legislation. And then I think we really need to talk about how much it really costs. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
By the way, I had to show up at this committee meeting because I have both my representative and my senator. So that would tell you, I do know when it's important to come to a legislative committee meeting.
Yeah, nobody can accuse you of being ignorant of the facts.
So, yeah.
You know, I agree. I don't like the idea of billing the BLM. But I think back, I remember in a prior life, we had a conversation with the Game and Fish Commission, and it was all my friends on the commission that were wanting to strip away the funding. They were trying to put it all on the feds, and we actually spoke against that action because we wanted to be able to maintain control of the data. And I think that's how I look at this. I know without a doubt that an overabundance of horses, it's not just the forage loss that we need to capture. You know, it's all the other impacts. It's, you know, the degradation of the habitat. It's the impacts on wildlife, on grazing. And I don't know how to kind of get our hands around that, but I do think it's important for the state to be able to articulate to our congressional delegation to give them the ammunition they need to be able to be successful. So I guess that's one thing I would ask is maybe the governor's office can look at that, see what we can do to come up with a revision of how we assess the impacts and the cost of overabundance of wild horses or feral horses. And figure out how to kind of help them build the heat so that this can get addressed. But I mean, I think the fact that every one of the Western states is over objective, I think that lends to our favor to say something needs to change. And I don't see any reason why Wyoming shouldn't be leading that change. I think we're in the best position. And I would encourage the governor to look at how we can actually have an influence on the Western states and how wildlife or how wild horses, feral horses, burros are managed. So I don't know if there's any questions, other questions for Representative Davis. Go ahead.
Yes, Randall, I guess my question would be, you know, we've achieved, in my opinion, primacy on several things, you know, with the management of wolves, sage grouse. Is this an avenue that we could go down with the horses to show that the state could actually lead in a management program in cooperation with the BLM? I mean, we just listened to what the tribes were saying, you know, they knocked them down to 1,500. Now they think that's a number they can manage. Is there any avenue there going down that way to show that we would lead best, knowing best what would be for Wyoming, is my question.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Davis, I couldn't agree with you more. It's just getting it done. And that once again starts with the federal level of either carving out some kind of an exception. Right now, we don't have rules so that I'm aware of that are so similar to the Endangered Species Act that allows that type of, we often refer to as primacy in oil and gas or minerals. But the sage grouse is actually a very good example. Wyoming has more sage grouse than any other state. And there's a reason for it. One is because we know how to manage them. So when we talk about, and yeah, we are tied up in knots just because they're threatened and because we have people in 35 other states out there that thinks it's a great idea to help us manage that bird. But at least that has opened up that door, and we've shown that we can manage them. I think that would be a joint BLM, a joint governors, a joint legislative, joint Forest Service effort, as we hope to be able to do that. We talked somewhat about the Good Neighbor Authority. I think that's a good way to get it started, sirs.
Go ahead, Co-Chairman Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Luthi, thanks for being here. It sounds like you're a fine listener back there, hitting on everything we're talking about. You mentioned something that hits home with me. I mean, I'm a strong advocate, obviously, of transfer of our federal lands to state ownership to be held as state public lands. I think we solve a lot of our problems that way. I mean, it's, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We say our federal partners, well, we're adversaries most of the time, it seems like. So, there's always going to be a debate, solutions, primacy here, primacy there, which is great. What Representative Davis just brought up. I think the root of the problem is we were promised at statehood equal footing with the original 13 states, and the property clause of the U.S. Constitution mandates that they dispose of the federal lands. That's debatable, obviously, with legal precedent, but if we go back to first principles of the U.S. Constitution, our act of admission, I think that's something that this legislature should really look at taking up again. This will go on forever, all of these issues. And I think the only solution is that we get full sovereignty and jurisdiction within our borders here. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why not, right?
Yeah.
Conceptually, I think everyone is comfortable with the idea that we should be able to manage all our lands within our borders. Now, with other states, most of those are privately owned lands, and should Wyoming get those lands? There's got to be some kind of a discussion. Do they remain state lands? Do they become private? But as it currently stands, there are some, and I'll just say some, benefits of having the federal government involved. Fire management is a good example. Fire is expensive. It would be difficult for Wyoming to foot that entire bill under the resources and the ability we have right now to get revenue. But is it a conversation worth having? I know, Mr. Chairman, this has been a big issue for you, both Mr. Chairman, and where we end up. And to be perfectly frank, well, we're looking at July 13th. This is probably going to be a nice discussion for a new governor. So, right?
Are you announcing? Is that what I heard? No.
You did not hear that, Mr. Chairman, but.
Quick follow.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that, Mr. Luthi. You hear those arguments a lot. I've kind of been in the thick of this for quite a while, actually, as you well know. And the argument on, can we afford the wildfires and can we manage it? Do we have the resources? I always say I'm glad Thomas Jefferson didn't worry about that when he did the Louisiana Purchase, because we probably would be talking French right now. So, and just so anybody listening online, they control 47% of our surface estate and 69% of our mineral estate. And there's really no constitutional authority for them to reserve those mineral rights too. I've got legal backup on that. And, with that additional, federal mineral royalty revenue, we've got a lot of horsepower there to manage things, fires, cheatgrass, whatever issues are out there on the surface. And, but no, I thank you for not totally denouncing me on that statement. And, back to the Wild Horse and Burro Act, and the ramifications of there again, we've got 3 votes in Congress. We've got a few more with the Western states, but we're not going to win those battles back there with the number of the representation that we have back there is in particular in the House. So do you think that the Wild Horse and Burro Act is something that should be repealed? That's one question I have for you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I stated earlier that if Congress isn't going to appropriate the money to run the program, shouldn't it belong with the states? And I stand by that.
Representative Davis?
One last question. Cost. Do you have an idea, or is this a question for the BLM? What does it take for a horse once it's captured through its lifetime? What is the cost in that horse?
Sharon, Davis, you said it absolutely correct. That is it. I thought that was on all along. My apologies. Representative Davis, you were absolutely correct. That is a question for the BLM.
Co-Chairman Ide.
Chairman, Mr. Luthy, last question for you. I've asked this before, and I think I got a statement. It's been a while back from the governor's office. You know off the top of your head how many ongoing, how many ongoing natural resource lawsuits that we have against the federal government right now? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I probably shouldn't say off the top of my head because I actually get a report. And let me qualify it just a little bit. During the Biden administration, we had a lot. And most of those are technically still on the books, but it was in the neighborhood of about 62. Now, a lot of those are stayed right now. So it's probably going to be less because the Trump administration has attempted to dismiss many of those cases. So what I think you're going to see in the next 2 years is that those against the federal government are going to go down. But then I think you're going to see us try and help the Trump administration as they proceed with their policies. But you'll see our involvement in supporting the federal government go up. And a good example of that is the clean air provisions dealing with coal-fired power plants. So and Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I just want to make one mention about the Honor Farm. I mean, I think I did cover a lot of things that you all covered, but one of the things that I think Governor Gordon is and should be very proud of is we came within about 45 days of losing that program this year. But due to his efforts of dealing with the Department of Labor, as well as the Department of the Interior, there was a dispute over paying prevailing wage, which frankly in this kind of a program does not make sense. Colorado closed theirs down largely on this issue, but we still have it. We got it done, and I'm so pleased to hear it's doing so well. So again, I appreciate the legislature's interest in that program. It is a great program.
And it's worth fighting for too. I mean, I'm convinced that's a program that I would like to see it replicated in some places. Doesn't fit everywhere. Are there any other questions for Mr. Luthi?
Thank you all. You're running out of time, to grill me on this stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
But I always appreciate, I enjoy working, as you know, with the legislature. We stand ready and able to work with you to help make this actually no longer a problem, but a solution.
And
thank you.
Would you like something from our committee directed to the governor? Would that help? You kind of mentioned something about us writing a letter requesting it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Chairman, that was an effort to avoid getting hard questions, but we always welcome direction from the committee.
Well, and I'm just asking and I know we're in the process, we'll be getting a new governor soon, but I wondered if Governor Gordon didn't want to have something as he leaves to kind of hang his hat on, because this would be a good one, I think.
Right. And Mr. Chairman, the question was whether or not you wanted to give us advice on sending a bill to the federal government. But now that we have some figures, again, we're happy to work with you on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And the last thing on the agenda would be public comment. I don't know. We got anybody in the audience that would like to comment? Well,
am I the public?
Yeah, I guess we did have the question that Representative Davis asked. If you could attempt to answer that, would be great. Thank you, Director
Okay, my
Kirby.
microphone's on.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. You're talking about the question regarding the cost, correct? Okay, so it's 15,000 to 45,000 per animal once they go into the off-range corrals. Is that per year? Or is that total over the lifetime? Total over the lifetime of the animal.
So 15 to 45,000.
And probably that depends on how many years we have them.
Yep, whether it's an old horse or a younger horse. Do you know how many we have that are being held on, I don't know what you call them. I know that we've had some that we've put on like holding facilities where they're out living their kind of free life as they can within a confines. But at one time I used to know that number, and I don't know where it is now.
We do have that. I left my sheet on my chair. Can I go grab it?
Yes, thank you. Listen to this.
Okay, so it looks like in what they're calling preparation facilities, which are like our Rock Springs corrals, the Wheatland corrals, across the system, there's 27, this was as of May, 27,700 horses. In the maintenance facilities, which are more the Honor Farm, the Wheatland Mantle Farm, and I don't know if they have I'll go to the pastures in a second. So in the maintenance facilities, so like Mantles, the Honor Farm, there's 34,350 horses being held across the system. And then in the pastures, I think those are the ones you're referencing where they go live their best life. It looks like across the system, there are 43,189 horses being held. And then we have public pastures. So those ones are off-range pastures. These are public pastures, a total of 1,212 horses being held there. So the grand total is 78,007. I'm sorry, I was just giving you capacities and you're just writing all this down. Hold on. Start over. My apologies. Okay. Currently in the corral, so like Wheatland, Rock Springs, across the system, there's 20,350. In the corrals are 17,153, and the maintenance facilities, on our farm, et cetera, 20,350. My apologies for not reading this chart correctly.
Excuse me, would you say those two numbers again?
Yeah, just erase everything I said. I'm going to start over. So my apologies.
Can we get a copy of
I
what
need
you,
better glasses.
could you send that to our committee?
We can, absolutely. So, okay. In the preparation facilities, so like Rock Springs and Wheatland, 17,153 across the system. In the maintenance facilities, so Honor Farm, the Wheatland Mantle Place location, 20,350. Then in the pastures, 36,459. And then in the public pastures, 1,216. So across the whole system, 58,025 horses being held in our holding facilities. And yep, we will send this to you. And I believe this is actually available online to the public. So you can look it up anytime, but we'll send you the link. And sorry for all that writing.
Thank you, Co-Chairman.
Those numbers are everything, not just the state of Wyoming.
Correct. Yeah. We don't have that kind of capacity. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
What does that, how many states, I guess I want to put, is involved with that, those numbers? Thank you.
Let me count really quick. Rough count, it looks like about 13 states.
Could you tell us what the cost is annually for all of those horses?
I don't have the annual cost in front of me. That's probably, is that available on our website as well? We'll send you the link to all of the.
If you would send that, because that's one of the things that I remember from the era when Representative Sue Wallace was trying to get a slaughter plant somewhere in the U.S. I remember that was one of the things. Is it's a pretty sizable amount of money, and maybe if I don't know. My bias is I think I look at wild horses, catching them and putting them in a pasture. I think after so long, I don't think you can make the argument that they are any longer wild horses. And so why are we maintaining them and paying? And that's the thing. I'm interested in the states that are benefiting from housing these horses. Maybe that's one of the problems, is there's too much money in it for them to give it up. But I appreciate if you could send us that information. Go ahead, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Coach. Yeah, and you'll be sending this, but I wanted to ask you real quick. You mentioned the corral facilities in Wheatland and Rock Springs, and there was a 20,000 head number there.
No.
20,350. Does that include corrals in the other 13 states that you? Okay, I just wanted to be.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, is this over a period of time, or is this other states? I just want to qualify and quantify that. Thank you.
Yes, and I can actually I have Wyoming capacities if you want. So Rock Springs, the capacity is 775. There's currently 398 horses and 33 burros there. Wheatland capacity is 3,500. There's currently 2,226 horses there and 83 burros. And again, these numbers could change. This was as of May. So when we send you the website, we publish this every month. So it's publicly available. They didn't come from Wyoming. I think so. Part of, as I was describing the larger system, as we gather horses in different states, so they probably came from Southern Nevada or Arizona. As we gather them, we move them through the system and we place them where we have spots for them. So that's usually they're from Southern Nevada or Arizona. We don't. We don't. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I do have ballpark numbers. So nationally, the Wild Horse and Burro Program, about 150 million. 100 million of that is holding, so off range. So holding, caring for the animals is the biggest expense of the overall program. And of course, that's nationally.
Actual number, but I appreciate you looking that up for us. Kind of mind-boggling. All right. I guess we'll open it up if there's anybody that's got any of the public have questions. I don't see anybody. Oh, maybe there might be one. Our TRCP.
Co-chairs, members of the committee, excuse me. Josh Metton, Wyoming field manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership and very active user of our public lands. Just wanted to just quickly mention that this is like, as we're having these discussions over these frustrations over federal land management, I really recognize that there's a lot of things to be frustrated about, and the urge to like go for the nuclear option of federal land, large scale federal land transfer. Like I can see why that's something that might excite some members in Wyoming. However, it's kind of a non-starter for Wyomingites and definitely a non-starter for sports people. So I appreciated Director Luthe's comments on representing the governor's office on kind of the values of public lands while recognizing the really frustrations that we have with them. And I'd also like to highlight Senator Dockstader, Representative Erickson, and Representative Davis for their co-sponsoring of SJ9, keeping public, the public lands resolution from this year, and as well as Representative or Co-Chair Worf for your yes vote on that. This is clearly something that Wyomingites have a kind of made a statement on, and we'd I think moving forward in a productive direction in terms of looking at opportunities like well thought out, well planned exchanges, transfers, disposals, making improvements to federal land management through things like the Rock Springs RMP amendment and the upcoming Bridger Teton Forest Plan revision, so that we can better represent the needs of Wyomingites and our shared legacy of public lands. I'll stand for any questions.
Co-Chairman,
Yeah, thank you for your public comment on that, Josh. What's your last name again?
Josh Metton.
Metton. Okay, thank you. Let me just ask you a quick question. Why, if Wyoming was to hold, if we did receive a transfer and hold those as state public lands with all of the access, maybe even increased access to those public lands, in no net loss of that or no net loss of land, why would you be opposed to that? Just a comment there, if you would. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. The Wyoming Legislature actually spent quite a bit of money of taxpayer dollars studying the management of state trusts of federal lands if it was transferred to ownership, and it was found pretty clearly that it's not something that's fiscally we're fiscally capable of doing, or is fiscally responsible. And I think just big picture wise, like public lands these are a long like legacy for all Americans. It is I certainly understand the desire for state control in federal lands, and that's why, like at the TRCP and with our Wyoming Hunt Fish partners, we work really hard to try and find opportunities for the state to be highly engaged and involved, make sure that the public are highly engaged and involved in public comment. periods in shaping how federal policy is done. Some other examples I can think of right now that are things that we should celebrate is like the Migration Corridor Executive Order, the success of the Greater Little Mountain Coalition in putting forth recommendations for the Rock Springs RMP, and how that's been something that's been incorporated into that. I think those are the ways that we can work with federal land management agencies, with federal partners, to make sure that the values of Wyomingites are represented on federal lands, while also kind of celebrating this amazing public lands legacy that is a result of Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase, and then people like Theodore Roosevelt, who were so thoughtful and thinking for future generations.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Committee. Is there any, guess there's nobody online? Okay. Is there anything the committee would like to do? Any requests you want to make with Representative Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really like going back. This has been great. And I want to kind of help us to focus our attention on what we can really do versus there may not be much of an appetite with our federal delegation to undertake. So I kind of want to focus, and I don't have the exact answer, but on Senator Dockstetter's earlier comments about, working, let's see if we can push up and maybe even form some groups to be able to work with them and, kind of jump a lot of the steps in my mind and get right to the meat of it. If there's the appetite to meet with them, and, whether it takes Washington, D.C., because this is especially the wild horse and burro, this is a major issue. And so I would just encourage us to skip right over to some of those things. And while I'm not capable of crafting exactly that directive, that's what I would like to encourage us as a committee to do, is craft something that's directly related to getting down to business with our federal delegation.
Senator Hope?
And maybe that comes in the form of a formal letter from us, and then we just pull the field reps specifically to this area together and say, what's our next step, and bring in a Zoom with the DC delegation, the reps there. And if we need to, we can make a quick trip back, own dollar, own time, and get it resolved. Let's go get it done.
Yeah, that's me. I want to get it done. I mean, I'm tired of talking about it. When I was on the Ag Committee, I mean, we talked about this all the way back in 2020. So I think that's a good idea. What do we want to do? Do we want to ask LSO to draft us a letter? Do we want to?
Mr. Chairman, what about just an informal letter asking for a meeting first with our ground team here from the delegation?
Yeah.
Nothing too formal, just saying, let's come together and get the result.
And yes, what I'm asking is who should be drafting the letter, just so it doesn't fall off the table and get lost.
It's my understanding we could probably ask our staff to do that for us.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So I think that's a good idea, and I do think that's the best way to approach it, is to start with our local reps and work with them as we work up that chain, building coalitions. We probably need to identify. I think we got the tribal council. I think we can count on them writing letters of support. to get this thing done. Okay. Well, with that, Talise, is that clear, or Savannah? I don't know which one of you, everybody points at Talise. Looks like you won. All right, well, with that, the only other thing on the agenda would be to go out to the Honor Farm. And I mean, it's well worth it if you haven't been there. I mean, but with that, it's 11:45. Do you think 12:45 we could be out to the Honor Farm? Does that give you guys enough time? Give us an hour to get something for lunch and go over there. That's amazing. Yeah, where would you like us to meet you? Just at the Honor Farm? Okay. I'll be going. Are you gonna be able to go, Bob? Okay. So right now, for sure, um, 3 of you or just 2? Okay. Looks like Talise is going to be busy working. And I would extend an invitation if the council members, if you haven't been out to the Honor Farm, if you'd like to go, I'm sure you guys would be welcome to attend. And that also goes to you, Representative Posey, if you'd like to come. Okay, that's good. So let's just say that we'll anybody want to make a motion? And can you make a motion to adjourn, or?
So move.
Okay. Second, all in favor? Aye. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
What do we?